YouTube is messing up a little bit. I don't know why, but we're live on yesterday's or last week's stream name. So let me fix that real quick. But what's going on, y'all? Can Nick speak? Let me see if this thing is getting you. Can you hear me? Oh man, technical difficulties. Sorry y'all. Give us a sec. Right. Yo, can you hear me? Bro. Can you hear me? All right. Glad you can hear me. The stream can't hear you, and for some reason YouTube is messing up, and we're live on last week's title. It's bizarre. Yeah. Yeah. We thought these technical difficulties were behind us, and they are not. Select speaker. All right. You should be good with the stream. Check.
The stream.
Yes.
They can hear me now, or
yes,
hopefully they
yes,
can.
They can.
Okay.
But now our video's out of whack. What is going on? This is wild. All right. Sorry, y'all.
This is not the return I was hoping to make.
No, I don't know what the hell is going on here. This problem is legitimately never happened to us before. This specific one, not sure what's going on. But let me fix the metadata for the videos. And if you could start answering questions in the chat while I am trying to fix this, that would be dope.
Yeah, so unfortunately, I can't see the chat.
Yeah, go to a different video. Go out of it. Go to YouTube Studio. There will be another video, and that's the one we're live on. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, that is so bizarre.
Just pretend the video was good. Yeah, Alex, I see you.
I apologize, guys. I'm showing up as fast as I can.
Yeah, this is stupid.
Okay, I see.
All right, I think we're back. I think we're good. If we're not, I'm going to do what Alex says and just pretend like the video was good. But this is real stupid. Not going to lie. This
is not our best log.
This is real stupid. But what's going on, you guys? Welcome to Face Mask Fantasy. What's going on, Alex? What's going on, Iron? What's going on, King of the J?
What's going on, guys?
KOTJ. I'm guessing that's King of the J. Something to that effect. But what's going on? How y'all been?
I need these ads to stop playing. That's what I need.
Thanks, Alex. I'm glad
finally
the video
am in.
and the vocals are clean. We just have to get the
What's
thumbnail
up, guys?
for the old video on the new video. None of the metadata is right. This is a mess. I'm sorry, y'all.
What was this just like it didn't recognize your first upload of this
Yeah, it didn't recognize that when I went live, I was going live to the video that I had created, that I had scheduled. But whatever.
Awesome.
This is we seem to
It
be
looks
up and
like we're-
running as of right now.
Looks like we're up and running.
Yo,
Okay.
CXK, thanks. Thanks, man. Good to see you.
Appreciate it. We
Good to see
might
you.
contest otherwise right now, but it looks like we're finally off the ground. So
Yeah.
appreciate it, John, as always, keeping us honest with the technical stuff. But looks like we're in good shape now. Appreciate everybody hanging with us for that hot second. It's good to be back. Little 4-day trip in the Carolinas, Charleston to be specific. That was a lot of fun. But am back. Looking forward to talking football with you guys.
Oh man, Iron.
You
I hope
pointed
you're-
out
I
there's
hope
80
you're doing
days
all right.
left.
I hope you're doing all right. I'm glad you're back. I'm glad you made it through it.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
No, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to Iron. Iron says he had COVID
Oh.
in the chat.
I can't see. Oh, I didn't see that. Oh, I thought you were.
No,
They were talking to me. Yeah,
No.
don't worry about me. That's not
I
important.
was not worried about you.
That's fine. Yeah, I didn't ask you. I didn't need that. But Iron, yeah, I see you did. Glad to hear that you're feeling better. That's important. The most important. So good.
All
But
right, but we're in
yeah,
business.
let's talk shop.
We're in business. Gronk has retired. We have not. We're still here, contrary to these technical difficulties and all that. But
The
Gronk
stream
has
wants us to
retired.
retire.
King of the
Gronk?
J, Gronk retired. Is Brait worth drafting? And redraft, hell yeah.
Sure.
And
At the
redraft,
end of
hell
the
yeah.
at the end of the draft, like very end.
He is just as good of a dart throw as Tunyon is right now, because it looks like he's gonna open the year on the PUP list, which I was not expecting, but a report came out earlier today or earlier this week. I believe it was earlier today that is the case.
Sorry, I didn't see that. Is that for like training camp or to start the season?
I would have to go back and check, but he is still dealing with residuals from the injury.
Okay, I'm gonna look that up.
Because
real
of
quick.
that, I have to drop him down a little bit. And Gronk jumps up. I mean, not Gronk. Brait jumps up. He does.
Sure, he jumps. I wouldn't draft him where we were drafting Gronk. That's too ambitious for me.
In
I'm not
2000,
expecting
I believe
similar
it's
results.
2016, he was the tight end 4 in standard and the tight end 7 in PPR. And in 2017, he was the tight end 7, I believe, in standard and the tight end 10 in PPR. That's Brait I'm talking about. And that was
Okay.
with Jameis Winston. And considering the lack of target competition that Brait is going to have, I know they drafted 2 rookie tight ends in Cade Otton and Ko Kieft, not expecting them to contribute right away. Considering the only real incumbent to begin the to begin the season is Mike Evans, unless you're talking about the likes of, Scotty Miller, Rashod Perryman, Jalen Darden,
No.
or Tyler Johnson, then Cameron Brait is a great bet to be the touchdown upside tight end that you wanted in Gronk to start the season. Now, he doesn't have the ceiling of a Gronk. Not many tight ends do, even at age 33.
Right.
But I mean, Brait is a solid bet to get a touchdown pretty much any game he plays, as maybe the number 2, number 3 target for Tom Brady right now.
He's got an ADP currently of 210 on Underdog Fantasy. That, of course, will climb. Rob Gronkowski's ADP prior to today's news was 112. So again, you have to, you got to dip into the 10th round, which means you would be taking Cam Brait. I'm not contesting. I'm just like stating information right now. If you were to go and that's even like 10 spots lower than Gronk, let's say, conservatively, you're taking Cam Brait over Pat Freiermuth, Mike Gesicki, Irv Smith, Cole Kmet.
But he won't
You
rise up to where
mentioned
Gronk
Tunyon.
was. Gronk was elevated in the ADP because it's Gronk.
Right. That I'm just saying, if like how high are you willing to go as far as where are you drafting Cam Brait? That's kind of like what I was posing by listing these names.
Fair.
Just
Yeah,
like, let's say, for argument's sake, you like put Brait, like, let's say 10 spots lower than where Gronk is now.
We can't really speculate on the ADP because, I mean, the fantasy community has been pretty out on Brait for a long time. So I don't know how far he's going to jump up. but I would bet you should be able to get Brait in like the 12th, 13th round in redraft when all is said and done. I don't think he's going to jump up to 10th round. I really don't. I think you're going to be able to draft him right around, where you draft Mo Alley Cox, guys like that, because I think he's in that mold of player, but he has just as much touchdown upside in this Tampa Bay offense as pretty much any tight end that you're drafting outside of the top 6. So I like Brait as a dart throw late, definitely in redraft. And in Dynasty, if you're a contender and it costs a 4th or 2/4 and you're weak at the tight end position, I might do that. But only if I'm a contender. I'm not, if I have him and I'm in anywhere close to a rebuild or middle of the pack, I'm selling for whatever offer I can get. But as a contender, if you have Tom Brady, if you're looking for the tight end stack, I mean, you might be able to get Brait for a 4th, 2/4.
Sure. Yeah, only if you're a contender, like you said. Other than that, flip him. Mm-hmm. There should be a lot of moves happening right now with Cam Brait, like regardless of where you sit. Because if you're a contender and you don't have him, go get him for the peanuts.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, if you're anything other than a top 3 or 4 team in your league, sell him to one of those teams.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I agree with that. So we'll see where his ADP lands. I think, it's yet another boost for Mike Evans. It's a boost for Russell Gage.
And it's a boost for Russell Gage.
And it's a boost for Leonard Fournette as well.
Yeah.
So, the ripple effects from this team this offense is still good enough where there are numerous players who can and will pick up the slack. I'm a little more interested in drafting them now. I would say, especially Gage. Not that he cracks our top 24.
But this just pushes. Does this push Leonard Fournette into your top 12? Because you had him right at 13, I believe. You had him right outside of the top 12 running back rankings. Does this push him up a little bit because he should be getting a little
maybe
more
it's
targets?
Like a 12, or maybe it's like a 12A, 12B kind of conversation with, like James Conner. But honestly, no, it doesn't, because the guy who I think is a little bit more of a factor as it pertains to Leonard Fournette is Rashod White, who is obviously still there.
Yeah. This is a slight boost for Rashod White too. Yeah.
I mean, he's being billed as as a pass catching back right now with a little bit of power.
With size, yeah.
Yeah, he's built very similarly to Leonard Fournette. Rashod White could be getting a little bit of a boost, more of a boost here as well. He could be the sneaky winner here because maybe Leonard Fournette's workload doesn't go up all that much, maybe a few more targets, but they're going to see what Rashod White can do.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
So, no, Leonard Fournette ultimately stays as my RB13. He does not jump into my top 12. But he's going to be a good bet this year. If you're like at the top of the 3rd round, it's probably a good move to draft him because he should be there.
He's even safer. That's all I'm going to say. He's even safer of a pick than he already was. And he was already a pretty safe pick based on workload alone. But we got a lot of people in here. Again, what's going on? KOTJ, what's going on? Alex, what's going on? Iron, CXK, good to see you. B, you have Gronk in Dynasty worth a stash on the idea he may return.
Only if it's or drop. I mean,
no,
only if you've got like the
might
room
come
right
out
now.
of retirement. Yeah, if you have the room.
Only if you have the room. Like you're not dropping. If you're not dropping even a dart throw right now, sure. But if you had to drop even a dart throw to add him, for me, it's not worth it. Like, yeah, he could return week 8, and it wouldn't shock me if he did. But right now, I don't want to give up like even the low guy on my roster, who I know is going to play week 1, or at least he's on the roster week 1.
Or even if it's, like the Noah Gray, Trey McKitty type, I think I still might want to hold on to them just because they present some upside and they have the youth on their side.
Yeah, there's like a 5% chance for a future there or something like that.
But there's like a 5% chance Gronk comes back for one stretch, maybe not
plays 8
in the
games.
fantasy season, Maybe that is just a stretch in the actual NFL playoffs.
Yeah.
But Gronk has come back from retirement before, so
right.
He could just keep coming out of retirement. Like, maybe this is his version of not showing up for OTAs and holding out and stuff, but he's
That's
doing
still
it for the regular season because he has nothing to prove. Right.
Yeah. And no need for training camp.
Exactly. Or the regular season if he's just going to come back for the playoffs.
Right. He's in a situation where he could he could wait until it's like week 4 or 5, and if the Bucs are for some stupid reason 2 and 3, he might be like, I don't know if I want to do that, so it allows him that flexibility.
He could just be all the way done. So
right.
We really don't
I would
know.
say for now, no, don't Adam.
Don't drop anybody.
Don't drop anybody for him. Yeah.
Well, just don't drop anybody. If you have him in Dynasty, don't drop him. Wait until you have to cut down your rosters in your Dynasty league and then do it. Because the offseason, there's still time left in the offseason. Gronk has proven to be fickle with his retirement status historically. So just hold. He could be back before the regular season. There's that possibility too. Anything's really possible with this situation, but for now we have to assume that he's just done for his career, and he has had an amazing career.
First ballot Hall of Fame.
Yeah, one of the top 6 tight ends in yardage, in total yardage. And that was with missing a couple of years in there and then also retiring for a full 2 seasons. So, yeah, Gronk has been amazing, and he was part of one of my favorite redraft trades of all time. So just throwing that out there.
There you go. Shout out to Gronk.
Shout out to Gronk. Shout out to Vernon Davis and Jackie Battle, too.
Solid move.
Long time ago. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that. But good to hear you're all good, Iron. That stuff is scary, even though
yeah, man.
Even though it might be the Omicron or it might be you never know. Scary regardless. But I'm glad you're doing okay. What's going on, Slim?
Sir.
Good to see you.
Up, Slim.
Not wide receiver related, but Cade Otton or Cameron Brate season. It's Cameron Brate season. If there's a season to be had.
Yeah. If there's a season to be had from a Bucs tight end, it's Brate.
Yeah.
Cade Otton is a prospect who should have some moments, should get an opportunity to flash a little bit here and there. But the safe bet with rookie tight ends, especially one that was drafted where he was, i.e. like not a day 2 pick. Or was he? He wasn't a day 1 pick. Let's put it that way. These players take time.
I wouldn't do that, Slim. Like I like ETN, but I know I'm cutting you off. I know Watson got some good news thrown his way with apparent, or at least out in the public now, that all but 4 of the civil suits have been settled out of court.
Yeah.
But there's still going to be a suspension of some kind. There's still rumors that it could be up to a year. Now, I think the thought process that it's going to be more than a year, I don't think he already served a year suspension. Now, he was paid for that, but he basically served a year of a suspension. I would speculate that there could be another full year coming. Maybe there should be another full year coming. But it looks like by 2023, he will be back on the field. But Burks, a 24, projected early first.
Oh, it's Christian Watson, not Deshaun Watson.
Oh, well then absolutely no.
Yeah, even more so, no.
Yeah, because, I was operating under the impression that, you were getting a quarterback.
It was a top 5
flex,
quarterback, yeah.
But if it's Watson and ETN, wide receiver, running back, exercise some patience here. I know the reports on Burks aren't good, but we haven't seen him yet. I know last week I was kind of shitting on Burks. I was, because he has his whole outlook for year one has me a little bit worried, but like I'm not selling off of that news right now, and I'm not overpaying for Etienne and Watson.
Yeah, I mean, could you take
the 24 early projected first? I guess I'm cool shipping that, and I'm cool shipping the second. I'm not trading Burks, but I would ship that first and second for Etienne. That I would do.
Yeah, I would do that.
Yeah.
Take the first and the 25 second and ask for Etienne, and that person can, who has that Etienne and Watson can keep Watson. Right now, I don't want to take a shot on Watson at the expense of that offer.
Has there been any glowing reports about Christian Watson at the Green Bay camp?
Not yet.
Because I haven't really heard any.
I haven't either. I heard a nice little report about Romeo Doubs.
Yeah, me too.
But like, again, there's only so much stock you can put in that. Watson is a little bit of a question mark, and the Packers have a history of drafting wide receivers who eventually work out, but not year one. So I'm proceeding with caution. I mean, obviously this is a dynasty move, but Burks is I know there's some weird vibes around Burks right now. I won't say bad, but I know there are some weird vibes around him right now, but I'm not selling Burks to downgrade to the potential of Watson.
I'm technically using this opportunity to buy Burks.
Yeah.
If there's any dip in value to the point where like you can sell him for a couple of 23 seconds, like I would buy Burks. If it, in that case, but
offer the 24 first and that's the 25 second for ETN.
That's with me being a little bit worried about his year one outlook. But
the vibes are weird, but yeah, I mean but I'm not giving up on a guy who has the draft capital.
Not 2 months removed from the draft before the season has started.
Yeah. This is the 18th pick in the draft with to start the season kind of like uncontested as the X receiver, for better or worse, for this team.
Then I expect the report that he is going to open the season as the team's wide receiver 3 to probably be correct. But that doesn't mean I'm selling. That means I'm buying.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Alex, you are right. 2021 was a holdout year for Watson, but technically, I mean, he's been out of the league for a year.
Yeah, so, he has been out for a year, and it's looking like it could be 2 years, but
people were speculating, they're going to throw the book at him. It's going to be a 2-year suspension. I think it's going to be a 1-year suspension. I do. We'll
see. There's still a lot to the NFL has yet to come out with their verdict, and hopefully they do it sooner than later, so we know definitively what's going on there.
Yeah.
So until then, we will wait. And I think that brings us to the end of the initial chat.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a good time to transition to the overarching topic for today. We are going to have a mostly redraft conversation moving forward because we're at the end of June. We're approaching July, which will be here before you know it. Redraft season is officially upon us. So we want to do some initial rankings and have been. This time last week, we did our wide receiver 1 to 12 rankings. You can check that out on our channel. We also did the top 24 rankings, 2 shows each for the running backs. Today, we are looking at wide receivers 13 to 24 that we both have. We do not know our rankings outside of the first 2 names because they came up in conversation during the 1 to 12 discussion.
Yeah.
Outside of that, we are going in blind. We don't know who we have ranked 15 to 24. So we're going to find that out today. And you'll hear our analysis for it. We're keeping things open to potentially move things around after hearing each other's arguments or, for a lack of a better word, in favor of some of these guys. And we'll go from there. And we, appreciate and accept any commentary at all about, how you guys feel about these guys as well. So Why don't we go ahead and kick things off? No surprises for the top 2 spots. John and I had the same names, just to recap, in the top 12, except for one. The top 12 receivers were Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, in some order, no particular order.
Mm-hmm.
Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, Jamar Chase, Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams, Mike Evans. Actually, that was the first order that we had. CeeDee Lamb, Tyreek Hill, T. Higgins, Deebo Samuel, Michael Pittman, and then we each had a Chargers receiver in the mix. I had Keenan Allen in my top 12. John had Mike Williams. To start today's conversation, the wide receiver 13, we both have, it's the same for both of us. It's A.J. Brown.
It is a Eagles wide receiver, I want to leave you the floor to begin with. So tell us what you think about A.J. Brown. And what's going on, Hunter? Good to see you.
What's up, Hunter? Hunter breaking the Gronk news for the Discord channel earlier today. So much appreciated. For A.J. Brown, he just misses the top 12, the consensus wide receiver 1 rankings for our channel. But he is firmly the highest of wide receiver 2s that we both have for our rankings. A.J. Brown, in his short history in the NFL so far, has come through on a run-first offense with remarkable efficiency. As an unquestioned wide receiver 1, that took maybe about half of a season to come to fruition in his rookie year.
Yeah.
It didn't take very long, all things considered, for him to burst onto the scene. Last year, his third year, went through some lumps, was a little up and down. The efficiency wasn't quite where we saw for the first year and a half of his career. And he missed a little bit of time here and there as well. But he still put up more than a couple bona fide wide receiver 1 performances, most specifically the semifinal week of the fantasy playoffs last year. So he's still big time. He's still one of the elite playmakers with the ball in his hands in the NFL, still just at a young age. This year gets traded to the Eagles. Somewhat similar situation from the perspective of, it's a low volume passing offense that he is coming to. The Eagles have a couple of pieces in Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert that are obviously going to soak up their own target share, but we expect A.J. Brown to, in some way, shape, or form, carve out the target share that he had in Tennessee at a bare minimum. And maybe more like a minimum, not a bare minimum. We still expect, it's the Eagles, it's a low volume passing offense, but a low volume passing offense, wide receiver 1 target share for A.J. Brown. So to that point, there are some concerns about, he's going to have to maybe come through on incredible efficiency again. If Jalen Hurts, which he can do and has done so far. But again, it makes things a little volatile, just even for a player of his caliber. But he's a big play waiting to happen. He can shred any secondary. It's a much more unproven quarterback in Jalen Hurts. So there's some concern there. If Hurts takes strides, if the passing offense opens up, and A.J. Brown helps contribute to that, we could be looking at a low-end wide receiver 1 season. I think it's going to be difficult for him. It's not out of the realm of possibility, but because there's uncertainty, once again, with the amount of volume that he might get, plus it's a similar situation that he moves to, but with a more unproven quarterback, we can't quite let him crack the top 12. So we both have him at wide receiver 13 on significant talent and a history of incredible efficiency.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And yes, it is redraft rankings at the objective. Thanks for joining us. Good to have you.
Yes, sir. What's going on, the objective?
But yeah, I mean, he's 25 years old, and last season he was the wide receiver 24 in points per game. The season before that, he was the wide receiver 6 in points per game. Last year, he was number 7 in yards per route run, in fantasy points per route run, and in targets per snap. So when he was out there, very heavily targeted, and he did well with those targets. But the problem was he had a 58%. He was 58th, not 58%. He was 58th in the NFL in snap share. He was 30th in targets, 67th in catchable target rate. And Jalen Hurts last year with Devonta Smith was 45th in catchable target rate. So a lot of people think he's going to a slightly worse quarterback. Based on what they did last season, Jalen Hurts was actually better.
Was actually better for the season than Ryan Tannehill.
Throwing accurate targets, right, at throwing accurate targets to his wide receivers than Ryan Tannehill.
How do you like that?
A.J. Brown had the lowest yards per reception of his career last year. If he was an aging wide receiver, if he was 30, I would be worried. He's 25. I'm not worried.
That's not a problem.
He's bouncing back. If his yards per route run goes back to where it was before his dual knee surgeries hampered him last year on the same amount of work, I crunched the numbers. I did that for y'all. 17.8 would be where his yards per route run goes back to. Because, again, insane efficiency from this dude.
Yep.
And he has the same amount of targets per game as he did with Tennessee. At that 17.8 yards per route run, he would have 129 targets in 17 games. And based on his catchable target rate, that would be 85 catches for 1,522 yards. Okay.
That's some extreme extrapolation, but okay.
That's some extreme extrapolation, but just looking, I'm just going by the numbers.
You're going by like
There's
the
a very
ceiling
good chance he doesn't hit that number. But based on his efficiency over the last few seasons before the dual knee injuries, that's the type of efficiency we would see from an A.J. Brown. And he has scored
in a perfect world.
In a perfect world. But no, actually, in an average A.J. Brown over the past 2 seasons before the injury world. Because I actually discounted his yards per route run, because in his first season, his yards per route run were 20.8. He has scored anywhere from 5 to 11 touchdowns a season. So if he gets anywhere close to that, that's a borderline wide receiver 1 season. So we can't.
Well, a 1,500-yard season is maybe the wide receiver 1 season.
No, because Debo had 1,400 yards, but he needed those 8 rushing touchdowns to finish second.
Okay. Well,
so
1,500 yards. Again, you're a top 8.
You have to keep in mind that
fantasy
wide receivers are playing. All players are playing one more league game
they're playing the
than
extra
ever
game.
before.
They're playing the extra.
Those numbers look a little bit inflated, but you do have to take account for that. So on a 16-game pace, that would be somewhere in the realm of 1,400 yards.
Which is still excellent, but
for a wide receiver the caliber of A.J. Brown, that honestly makes sense. The only thing is he going to get the amount of targets necessary to get to that number? We're not sure, but he should be a shoo-in as long as he can stay healthy for at least 1,000 yards and 5 touchdowns, based on what he's done historically in the league. And
like,
that's not
a 70 catch, 1,000 yard, 5 touchdown would be like the floor of a AJ Brown and games played, of course, as well, which has the past 2 years he has missed chunks of time. But of course, so does everybody else. So yeah, I mean, the upside for a wide receiver 1 finishes there. We didn't quite have him cracking that top 12. There are some strong options ahead of him, but the argument can certainly be made. Honestly,
digging into it, like, it's because the strength of the wide receivers ahead of him is so great that we have to rank him at 13.
It's either like elite quarterbacks or elite quarterbacks, elite play, or
he deserves to be a little bit ahead of that 13th rank. We just have to put him there because that's where he falls. There's just a lot of good wide receivers in the NFL now,
with other positive variables in their favor. So, AJ Brown at 13, and then to finish off what we both know about each other's top 12 to 24, 13 to 24 rankings, we both have a Charger here, just different players. I had Keenan Allen in my top 12, so I have Mike Williams at 14. John had Mike Williams in his top 12 and Keenan Allen at 14. I talked first about AJ Brown, so I want to make sure I give you the floor to give an opening comment at some point. Might as well be the very next one about Keenan Allen at 14.
Well, look, I don't have a lot to say about Keenan Allen.
We talked about this
I really
lot
don't.
last week.
Well, even without that, he's just an efficient target monster. I don't need to dig into all the numbers that I dug into with A.J. Brown. I will if you want me to. 11th in points per game last year, 7th in points per game in 2020, 8th in points per game in 2029. Now, I did speak when talking about A.J. Brown about yards per route run being his lowest of his career would be a little bit of a worrisome stat if he was an age 30 wide receiver. Keenan Allen is this is his worst point. Last year was his worst points per game since 2018, but he still has had 6 touchdowns in 4 out of the last 5 seasons. He has a high watermark of touchdowns of 8, so he's not scoring double-digit touchdowns, but he's as safe as they come. You can bet on him getting at least 6 touchdowns. He's a PPR monster with a high floor and a pretty static ceiling. He has not had less than 137 targets or receptions in the last 5 seasons. Target monster. He's the definition of a high-end wide receiver 2 with low-end wide receiver 1 upside. And I think the reason why I have him ranked a little lower is because the ceiling for Mike Williams is higher. But the floor for Keenan Allen is about as high of a floor as you can find at the wide receiver position, really.
Yeah.
I mean, he might not be a league winner, but you will not lose games because of Keenan Allen. You will just not. He's one of the safest wide receivers in the league. And even in his age 30 season, even if there is another slight decline on his points per game, because it was his worst points per game since 2018 last year in his age 30 season this year. I mean, again, he has never had less than 137 receptions in the last 5 years. So and nothing's changed in this offense.
Or I think that's targets.
Is it targets?
Yeah, because I know he's been around the 100 catch mark. Yeah, but like the point remains, 4 of the past 5 seasons, he's had 100 catches.
Yes.
He's topped 100 catches. Like rock solid consistency. I have him as my top 12 for that reason. Mike Williams' ceiling is higher, but he's more boom bust. We're both saying the same thing. We are just approaching. I have him at 12. You have him at 14. I had him at
11, I believe, but still.
You have him at 11.
A 3-spot difference between these two players. They're both great assets to invest in.
Yeah, draft them both, or draft whoever you get the chance to draft.
Which one do I want in best ball, Slim? Absolutely, Mike Williams.
Mike Williams in best ball, and it's not close.
Nope.
Mike Will in best ball because he maximizes your ceiling. If he has a complete bust week, ideally you have drafted well, and there are other guys who can fill in those weeks. Absolutely, Mike Williams in best ball over Keenan Allen. In redraft, there's much more of an argument for there's more of an argument for Keenan Allen. In best ball, I don't think there's an argument for Keenan Allen, just point blank, because Mike Williams will give you those ceiling weeks.
And again, I mean, he's scored 6. Keenan Allen, I'm talking about 6 touchdowns in 4 out of the last 5 seasons, and the one outlier season was an 8 touchdown season. He's not gonna have like the 13 touchdown season that will really boost you to the top of the best ball ranks that some of these other wide receivers have around the area where he's gonna be drafted. So, yeah, it's Mike Williams by a long shot in best ball.
Mike Williams in best ball by a long shot. If we were doing best ball rankings, Mike Will, for me, would be over Keenan Allen.
But talk about one of the best stacks in the league with him and Herbert. I mean, in best ball.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. Yep.
But who do you got?
Grab Palmer too there.
Who do you got at 15? And this is where we go into uncharted territory. I don't know what his rankings are moving forward, and he doesn't know what mine are. So who do you got at 15?
15 for me is DJ Moore.
Okay.
And I struggle with this because this is the first time where I'm really ranking a guy where he is not in an ideal scenario at all.
I have him, just for what it's worth, down at wide receiver 23, and it has nothing to do with his talent.
So there you go. So I'm a little higher on I'm a little higher on his chances than you are. There's a tier break. There's a talent level tier break here for me because I think DJ Moore is fantastic. He completely fizzled out toward the end of the season last year. So I understand there being like he was not playable for the last, I want to say at least the least 4 to 6 games to end 2021. DJ Moore was a guy that you were leaving on your bench in redraft leagues. It became such an anemic situation. He couldn't be trusted. And each week he fizzled. He did nothing. So I understand this ranking's a little ambitious because not much has changed on the Carolina Panthers. That being said, despite an atrocious end to the year that, again, was through no fault of his own, he still accumulated 163 targets, 93 catches, over 1,100 receiving yards. His patented 4 touchdowns a season. So obviously the touchdown number remains low for his career. That's his career high. He's done it 3 straight years. But the 93 catches buoyed him. I had the points per game number in front of me just now, about
23
for the wide receivers for last year. 23.
Year.
So he was a low end wide receiver too. A lot of that was dragged down by the awful performance at the end of the season. I might be ranking him a little bit high on the potential for an improved situation remaining, that being the Panthers trade for Baker Mayfield. Because even that would be far and away the best quarterback that DJ Moore has played with for his career. That remains a scenario. Even if it doesn't, he caught 93 passes from a broken quarterback situation last year. Even if those numbers come down, 80 catches, slightly less than 1,000 yards, maybe he finally breaks that 4 touchdown hurdle, because based on the history of, regressing to the mean, that number has to go up eventually, even with subpar quarterback play, which is what he has right now. So I'm kind of betting on some intangibles and some outliers right now with DJ Moore. But the main intangible that I'm drafting him here, which at this point becomes around close to the end of the 3rd round of 12-team leagues, I'm betting on talent. And that's what it is. And I think DJ Moore is a tremendous ascending talent who just happens to be in a bad situation. And the vibes could change in Carolina and remain that way, where they possibly remain competitive in the second half of the season with a healthy Christian McCaffrey, which they did not have by the end of the season last year. So DJ Moore at 15 for me, kind of on some, there's definitely some volatility involved here. I understand.
Yeah, I mean, on talent alone, he deserves to be up there. He might, based on talent and youth, he might deserve to be even higher. But the situation for me has him down, for me, at wide receiver 23, which was where he finished in points per game last year. And the year before that, he was wide receiver 28 in points per game. And the year before that, he was wide receiver 14 in points per game. So he does have that high-end wide receiver 2 upside, even with bad quarterback play, because in that year he was dealing with the combination of quarterbacks of Cam Newton, Kyle Allen, and Will Grier, if you remember. Will Grier, but still put up an 1,000-yard season and still finished wide receiver 14 in points per game. Speculation that he might get a slight quarterback bump with Baker Mayfield possibly going to Carolina soon.
I'll take it.
DJ Moore was the wide receiver 19 in 2021 in half PPR, wide receiver 22 in 2020, and the wide receiver 18 in 2019. Those aren't the points per game numbers, but just the overall finishes. And
overall finishes.
For what Baker can do for him, because the knock on him that I have is the quarterback play solely.
Yeah, it's real bad right now.
Baker made Jarvis Landry the wide receiver 13 in 2019, while Odell finished as the wide receiver 26, and both had over 1,000 yards. The reason Odell finished so low is because he didn't score any touchdowns. He only scored 4 Not any touchdowns, but you get my point. So Baker is a little bit of an upgrade over these other guys. How much? I'm not quite sure, but at least if Baker Mayfield goes there and Baker Mayfield's all the way over his shoulder injuries and he can learn the playbook and put together a solid season that is in line with what Baker Mayfield can do, he can reach the ranking that you have him at. He can. But Baker has to go there first. So this is kind of like right, yes, all of the rumblings are that it's going to happen, but think about how many trades have happened where, like, out of the blue, something crazy happens. Out of the blue, Baker Mayfield could still go to the Seahawks. All these reports could be a smokescreen. We didn't know that Deshaun Watson was going to go to the Browns until it was announced. We thought he was going to go to one of 3 other teams. 3 days before that trade went down, the Browns were out of the running, and then all of a sudden they had him. So these reports for Baker going to Carolina, take them with a grain of salt. Don't make any knee-jerk reactions based off of these rumors. There's a chance he stays in Cleveland. There's a chance he goes to a team like Seattle. There is a good chance he goes to a team like the Panthers. But we're just not sure. And because of that, I have him ranked lower because if he plays with some combination of Sam Darnold and Matt Corral, he has to be downgraded a little bit to the point where he is, as of right now, my wide receiver 23. But he did just get a contract extension, locked him up for the next 4 seasons. He got a 3-year, $61 million contract. He is now the 7th highest paid wide receiver in the NFL. And he deserves it.
Yeah.
Because I saw another analyst make the point that if he were given a full-time role in his rookie year, he would have 4 straight seasons of over 1,000 yards in the NFL, just like Mike Evans. But because they did not play him as a full-time wide receiver in his first season, he doesn't have that accolade, so he gets knocked down a few pegs in the thought processes of Dynasty owners. But really, we should be thinking about what DJ Moore is doing with the quarterbacks that he's doing it with, the same way we thought about Mike Evans 4 or 5 years ago. So I really like the talent. I just can't put him that high yet.
I'm also operating like, his quarterback could also be like Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm holding out hope. Like, come on, Carolina, do something for this guy. So I have Moore at 15. We've said our piece on that. Who you got there?
I'm going to be a broken record with this guy until the day that he is not in the NFL anymore. I got Brandin Cooks, wide receiver 15.
Wow. That's pretty high.
You said that last year, and guess where he finished last year?
Wide receiver 15.
Yeah. Well, no, not in 2020 he was wide receiver 15. He was wide receiver 19 in points per game, wide receiver 17 the year before, and the year before that was the year for the Rams where he had 3 concussions in a 5-game span. So we just gotta throw that one out the window. We gotta start thinking about accumulated concussions, like we think about. I mean, if Brandin Cooks had torn his ACL in that season, I feel like fantasy owners wouldn't be so down on him. But because it was 3 concussions and that isn't thought of as such a bad injury, consensus-wise, he's knocked down a few pegs because we saw him finish wide receiver 67 while basically being healthy. But he's only 29. He hasn't hit that age 30 cliff. In 2020, again, while playing with Will Fuller for most of the season as the number 2, Will Fuller only missed the last 5 games. He finished wide receiver 15 in Brandin Cooks. In 2019, again, the season where he had 3 concussions in 5 games, he was playing with Goff. We can throw that one out the window. In 2018, he was the wide receiver 13 as the wide receiver 2 for the Rams. In 2017, he's the wide receiver 12 as the wide receiver 1 for the Pats with Gronk there. In 2016, he was the wide receiver 9 as the wide receiver 2 for New Orleans playing alongside Michael Thomas, who was the wide receiver 1 for that squad. He's been a low-end wide receiver 1 or a high-end wide receiver 2 his entire career outside of one season that we've already mentioned. He's now playing in his first season as the wide receiver 1 for his team with an incumbent solidified quarterback. Last year, he struggled. He was juggled between, playing with Tyrod Taylor and Davis Mills while they figured out what to do at QB. And last year, he was wide receiver 20, and that was with terrible quarterback play over the first half of the season before Davis Mills kind of flipped a switch and turned it on in the last 8 games. Think about what he would have done.
Funneling him targets.
Right. Think about what Brandin Cooks would have done if Davis Mills had been what he was over the last 8 games over the course of the full season. He would have finished better than wide receiver 20. He now has rapport with that quarterback in Mills. The target competition, I know Brevin Jordan, we like him. I know Nico Collins showed some good things. I know John Mechie went there as their slot receiver. Good young core, but the target competition is relatively negligible when put up next to a guy of Brandin Cooks' caliber. They're good role players, but none of them are stopping Brandin Cooks from being the target hog in this offense. And Mills loves Cooks. If you look at the target distribution, when Cooks was playing, Cooks was getting hyper targeted when he was out there. So I think having Brandin Cooks wide receiver 15 is basically right where he will finish again this year. And he will continue to be undervalued by the fantasy community because he's Brandin Cooks and he plays on the Texans and he's playing with Davis Mills.
Yeah.
But look past that a little bit. Look at what he's done historically. He's done nothing but basically produce at this value or higher his entire career.
Yeah.
So I don't think this is I don't think this is out of line. I think Brandin Cooks deserves to be ranked as the wide receiver 15, and he has basically every single year.
And I've always been a fan of Brandin Cooks. I guess I don't know. I mean, my first reaction was like, ooh, that's a little high. I have him as my wide receiver 19, so I'm not like a million miles away from you. Sure. I do have him down a few spots. There are some guys who are probably, it's fair to say that Brandin Cooks' body of work should put him over these 3. I guess that they are younger players who are in, I think, either also who got an upgrade at quarterback or are in slightly better situations, and maybe that's why I put these other 3 guys ahead of him. Mm-hmm. Where you have Cooks at 15, I have him at 19. But I mean, you nailed it. Otherwise, he's been a rock solid producer when healthy, and for the most part, he has stayed healthy.
Outside of one season, where it was concussions, it wasn't a lower body injury. It wasn't
no ligament tears, like none of that. Yeah. And figures to be funneled targets once again on an offense that is lacking in playmakers. And honestly, he's at that point where he's 28 years old, and now I'm just spitballing, but it's not out of there's a non-zero chance that he gets traded to a contender.
Yeah, we speculated that all last season because of his contract. Yeah. Now, they did re-up with him one more season. They did extend him for a year.
Could make him a more appealing trade target.
It very well could, because based on what he produces, he is a value cap-wise.
Yeah, and still just 28. So
yep. Will be 29 when the season starts, but still.
Yeah, I mean, and even if he doesn't, he remains like could be a garbage time hero for a bad Texans team. It's a good safe investment. He's currently being drafted as the wide receiver 26 on Underdog Fantasy with an ADP of 54. So I would say jump in your best balls and draft Brandin Cooks.
He's been a target for me for years, and he hasn't served me wrong.
He pushed 2 tournament teams through to me last year almost single-handedly, and upped my best ball return quite nicely. That was the first time I had like a really strong finish overall in best ball. Brandin Cooks
got me to a ship in Dynasty so last year. So yeah,
there you go.
Love Brandin Cooks. Love Brandin Cooks. Who do you got at 16?
Yeah. So this is where it might be you're probably going to say, like, I'd rather have Cooks over these guys, and that's totally fair given what the conversation we just had. I guess, again, I'm banking more on, like, potential better circumstances. 16, I have Terry McLaurin.
Okay.
So this might be a little ambitious because he finished as a wide receiver 3 last year.
And I have him down at wide receiver 20, but make your piece.
So I don't really have that much to say here because there's not much "what have you done for me lately" proof in the pudding. I concede that when it comes to Terry McLaurin, but he remains a fantastic player in what has so far been a terrible situation, much like DJ Moore. Terrible quarterback play up to this point. Washington slugged through last season with Taylor Heineke. They get an upgrade in Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz made Michael Pittman, as far as fantasy points per game last year, a high-end wide receiver 2, low-end wide receiver 1. Right now, we have Michael Pittman. Like, Michael Pittman is objectively, I think it's fair to say, has surpassed Terry McLaurin from a confidence and talent perspective. No arguments there for me. And there's your proof in the pudding. We both had him ranked inside of our top 12. But McLaurin, for me, Ian Harditz does a great job on his Twitter page, putting he puts Game Pass highlights on his Twitter account for individual players here and there. Terry McLaurin is one of them, and his highlight reel is him consistently being wide open and nothing happens on the play.
That's awesome.
There's an incredible touchdown catch by Terry McLaurin against the Atlanta Falcons where he goes left, cuts back inside to the right, is wide open, streaking down the field in the end zone for multiple seconds, is kind of like jumping around, repositioning, and then in the time for the defender to catch up to McLaurin, then the pass gets thrown, and he catches this ridiculous contested catch for a score that should have never been a contested catch in the first place. The point that I'm trying to make here is that, like, the contested catch rate percentage and all of that stuff can be a bit of an illusion when the guy was wide open for 5 seconds before, and it should never have been a contested catch in the first place. And, oh, by the way, he still made the play. Now he gets Carson Wentz, who just did support a low-end wide receiver 1, high-end wide receiver 2 season. Terry McLaurin is in a much similar situation as far as a target competition that Pittman was in last year. Much worse overall situation, like especially with the offensive line. But I think the talent is there for Terry McLaurin to produce a wide receiver 2 season. I think it could be a little ambitious, but I believe in the talent. I know the proof in the pudding hasn't been there recently, but I think he gets the best quarterback of his career, and that buoys him to a stronger finish in 2022.
I don't disagree with the majority of everything you just said. Basically anything you just said. I just don't have him quite as high as you. Again, I have him at wide receiver 20. He is in his age apex season at age 27, so this should be the best season that we see just from a age apex standpoint. Like, he's right at the point where most wide receivers do their best work. And just for comparison's sake, half of the time I'm talking about Terry McLaurin, I'm going to be talking about Michael Pittman. Michael Pittman was the wide receiver 22 with Wentz last year in points per game, finished wide receiver 16 overall. McLaurin is better now than Pittman was at the beginning of the season last year. Not right now, but if you're talking where McLaurin is right now based on the quarterback that he's playing with, Wentz, and Pittman, when he played with Wentz, McLaurin is better now than Pittman was at the beginning of the year.
I got what you're saying.
The target competition is similar. You've already said Wentz is the best quarterback of his career. Not saying much, but that's fine.
Not saying much, but yeah.
The numbers here are kind of illuminating to me. McLaurin was the 70th wide receiver in catchable target rate and the 79th in target accuracy last year. He was getting terrible targets thrown his direction and doing the most he could with them. Michael Pittman with Wentz, who is nobody's idea of one of the best quarterbacks in the league, but still an upgrade, was the 44th wide receiver in catchable target rate and the 55th wide receiver in target accuracy last year. So we're talking about a 30% or a 30 player jump, a 30 player jump.
Not great,
but it's still a 30 player jump.
Significant upgrade.
Yeah, in both metrics.
Yeah.
And in unrealized air yards. McLaurin was third last year in unrealized air yards because he was getting deep targets and they were super inaccurate and he was not coming up with them. Or they were too late for him to do anything with, to your point.
Yeah.
You know where Michael Pittman was in unrealized air yards last year?
No, probably not very high.
46th.
Yeah, that's lower than third.
So if McLaurin starts realizing some of the unrealized air yards that he's getting on a play-to-play basis, game-to-game basis, he's going to finish higher than the wide receiver 29 in points per game than he finished last year. Now, because Wentz isn't one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and he does get injured himself and tend to fall off a cliff production-wise about halfway through the season every year, I do have to temper my expectations with McLaurin. He is another one of these receivers where, based on talent, he would be ranked a lot higher, but the situation has me my expectations a little bit tempered. That said, he should still be a mid-tier wide receiver too. So I have him at wide receiver 20. You have him at wide receiver 16. He should fall somewhere in there. I have no problem with either ranking.
Yeah, currently the wide receiver 21 drafted on Underdog Fantasy, like Brandin Cooks. I think he is a value.
Yeah.
So that's my guy at 16. Who do you have at 16?
This is a guy I don't know. I think you might have him in your top 24, but I am honestly not sure. And there are a couple of guys that I have in my top 24. I'm not sure if you're going to have in your top 24.
Yeah.
My wide receiver 16, and I realize a lot of people aren't going to have him here. It's DK Metcalf.
Okay. He's in there, but he's lower for me.
Wide receiver 20 in points per game last year. Wide receiver 10 in points per game last year. Slim, are we doing one-on-ones today? We do the one-on-ones on Wednesday. But throw us the information in the Discord. We can absolutely pencil you in for a Wednesday one-on-one. Yes. But DK Metcalf, he's only 24 years old, man. He's only 24. Mm-hmm. 129 targets in back-to-back seasons. Over the past 2 seasons, I know it's with Russell Wilson, but one of those was basically with 4 games of prime Russell Wilson, and then you had 5 games of Geno Smith, or 4 games of Geno Smith, and then the rest of the season was played with a shell of Russell Wilson because he injured his throwing hand and couldn't throw.
Yeah, and the season went in the tank. When seasons go wrong, it affects the players. Yeah,
right. But he still has a floor of wide receiver 20.
Even
in that season, even in last year, he was wide receiver 20 in points per game. He was, let's see here. The quarterbacks aren't strong. Geno Smith, Drew Lock, unless they do something about the quarterback situation. But he was the wide receiver 4 in fantasy over the weeks he played with Geno Smith from weeks 5 to week 8. He was the wide receiver 4.
Doesn't make any sense, but
it doesn't make any sense outside of the fact that he was just hyper targeted, which is what bad quarterbacks do. They hyper target their number 1 target, which is who DK Metcalf is at 24 years old. Bad QBs and minimal target competition because, yes, we like Tyler Lockett. Noah Fant has some upside, but minimal target competition because we're really only talking about one bona fide target here outside of DK Metcalf in Tyler Lockett. Will mean that DK Metcalf will be hyper targeted. He has 1,605 air yards in back-to-back seasons. Over 1,605 air yards in back-to-back seasons. He was number 3 in deep targets last year. He was number 6th in air yards in 2021. And number 1 in unrealized air yards. We just talked about unrealized air yards with Terry McLaurin, who was number 3 in unrealized air yards. DK Metcalf was the number 1 receiver in unrealized air yards, and he still finished wide receiver 20, and I believe in points per game, and I believe in 2020 points, I think he was wide receiver 14 last year. Despite that, let me look this up. In standard leagues, DK Metcalf was wide receiver 10 last year. In half PR, he was wide receiver 12. And in full PPR, he was wide receiver 14. And that was with him being the number 1 wide receiver in unrealized air yards. He was still a top 14 wide receiver in PPR and a top 10 wide receiver in standard leagues. I know he's getting bad quarterbacks. He has proven to, over a 4-game sample size, played well with that one of those bad quarterbacks. So he can still get it done. And I just think, I know everybody's down on him with the team moving on from Russell Wilson. I know they, judging off of what they did in the draft, are technically recommitting to the run game. But having DK Metcalf at wide receiver 16, if we expect him to take a step back from where he has been over the last few seasons, he was wide receiver 5 in 2020. Ceiling of wide receiver 5, floor of wide receiver 14, and I have him right here at wide receiver 16. I feel like that falls in line to me. It might not feel great on a week-to-week basis, seeing him out there getting thrown ducks from Geno Smith.
There's going to be some gross throws his way.
Right, and there will be some games where his box score does not look good at the end of the game. But I bet you there will be games where he has 120 yards and 2 touchdowns. There will.
Oh, yeah, there will be.
Multiple games like that. Again, he's not a safe option. He is a great best ball option to me.
Yes.
Even with the bad quarterback. And he might be back-to-back years. Be number 1 in unrealized air yards in back-to-back years. He might. But if he gets better as a wide receiver, even though his targets might be getting worse, he should be able to even it out a little bit and finish as a mid-tier wide receiver too. That's where I have DK Metcalf.
So I have him at wide receiver 20.
Okay.
So I'm a little farther down. And I agree with everything you said about the best ball strategy. And I mentioned this in the Discord maybe a month ago or so. I am hammering the quote unquote dip that his ADP is currently going through.
What's going on, Quinn?
When I last checked, it was like around the end of the end of the 3rd, top of the 4th. What's going on, Quinn? Let me check. Let me just double check really quickly on DK's current ADP on Underdog Fantasy. It is 20. No, what am I saying? Wide receiver 23, ADP of 48. So you can have him in 12-team drafts. You know, at the end of the 4th round.
Think about that.
Is that math correct?
Think about that. That's wild.
Or maybe more like top of the 4th round.
That's wild.
Not bottom of the 4th round. Top of the 4th round. I'm sorry. Excuse me. Yeah, I mean, you can have him just inside the top 50. It's pretty good value.
Dude just had a down year by anybody's standards and still finished wide receiver 10 in standard leagues and wide receiver 14 in PPR.
Yeah. The best ball strategy is excellent. Getting him at 48 is kind of ridiculous. And for what it's worth, I think his teammate is also being severely undervalued as well. Tyler Lockett's got an ADP of like 93. That's kind of wild too. But he doesn't crack our top 24. DK does. He is capable of bona fide week-winning, slate-busting performances. And for whatever reason, you already mentioned it. We already talked about it. he played better last year without Russell Wilson, and now Russ is gone. And bad quarterbacks hyper target their wide receiver ones. We just talked about this. It applies to DJ Moore. It applies to Brandin Cooks. It applies to Terry McLaurin. It applies to DK Metcalf. The difference between DK Metcalf and those other guys I mentioned is DK Metcalf has had bona fide wide receiver one performances from a overall finish and points per game perspective. So I might honestly have him a little too low at wide receiver 20. Obviously, the concern is Seattle might be a really bad team next year,
which means they'll be throwing to stay in games.
They'll be so DK Metcalf could be a garbage time hero. Yeah. Could be ugly. Probably will be ugly if it is some combination of Drew Lock and Geno Smith next year. But players produce on bad teams as well.
It'll be Geno Smith over Drew Lock too. Drew Lock is just bad.
Man, I wish he was better than he actually is.
He's a likable character, but
but this might not be. He just might not quite be good enough.
No.
That being said, Metcalf is excellent. Offers you sleep busting upside. You can get him almost 50 picks into drafts right now, according to Underdog. That just doesn't feel correct. So, yeah. There's lots of value at wide receiver right now.
Yeah, there is.
I might need to move him up a little bit. It's going to be difficult for me too. I mean, I guess maybe I can move him up over who I have at 17, who I am kind of interested in, but
who's that?
Is his team's wide receiver 2, and it's Jaylen Waddle.
Okay.
I have Waddle at wide receiver 17. This could be drafting him at his ceiling. Could be. Tyreek Hill comes in, is going to soak up 150 targets. They retained Mike Gesicki. They added Chase Edmonds, who's a pass-catching running back. The only big time, you can't even call it big time, the only departure from the team from last year is Devontae Parker in a trade and Will Fuller, who never panned out. So while a few mouths leave, they add Edmonds, and, of course, they bring in Tyreek Hill, who is a monumentous upgrade over those other guys. So there is some concern for what Waddle's workload is going to look like, and is Tua able to support multiple high-end options at the receiver position? These are all outstanding questions. I am a bit more of a believer in the potential for Tua than John is, so maybe that's kind of baked into this ranking a little bit for me. But Jaylen Waddle set the rookie record last year for catches for 104. He's a slightly tougher sell in half PPR, but in full PPR, I would fully endorse this ranking. But even in just half PPR, even a bit of regression, he's still looking at a floor of 80 catches. Could be low ADOT. There could be low receiving yards involved, and we'll see just how good the Miami Dolphins are as far as moving the ball down the field and being in scoring position. That would warrant a ranking like this. Waddle's got now a year of chemistry with Tua under his belt. That's a feather in his cap. And I believe in the talent. And I believe in the draft capital. 6th overall pick. He's going to be a major factor in what the Dolphins want to do on offense. Tyreek, of course, probably slides into that number one role. But Waddle proved his worth last year, and I think had an overall wide receiver 2 week prior to getting COVID. So the talent is there. Is the situation there? We'll see. But I think he's going to be another, he's should be lined up for another big PPR season.
Yeah, I am super worried about him.
I know you're worried about
talent. Talent-wise, he's one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. Talent-wise, you don't break the rookie record for receptions without being talented. You don't, in your first season, catch 104 balls and go over 1,000 yards without being real good.
Yeah.
But I hate Tua. Like,
I know you've been
like I really don't. Tua has me real scared, and the fact
sorry, Quinn, real quick, I'll talk about Rondale in just a second, but I'll let John finish his thoughts about why he's really, really scared about Waddle because of Tua.
Yeah, I think the jump we're gonna see from Tua first year to second year, I feel like it's gonna be a jump to the negative. I feel like it's gonna be
it's gonna be a backwards jump.
I mean, if we're expecting, I feel like this is kind of like the situation that my guy that I have at wide receiver 17 is in too, and that's Diontae Johnson.
Okay.
Because the targets are gonna go down. He was the number one wide receiver in that offense last year, and it wasn't close. Jaylen Waddle. Now he has the best wide receiver, arguably the best wide receiver, hands down the most electric wide receiver in the NFL, arguably best in the NFL playing opposite him.
To contest with, yeah.
They brought back Gesicki. They brought in pass-catching running back in Chase Edmonds. They brought in Cedric Wilson. I know, still. They brought in another wide receiver. They drafted Eric Ezekanma. I know. Shouldn't really affect Jaylen Waddle, but still, they brought in more target competition. I just don't see how he gets anywhere close to the 140 targets he got last year. And with those 140 targets, I know he was a rookie, but he barely got to 1,000 yards in 17 games. Barely. I'm not talking about the talent in Jaylen Waddle. Tua and the Dolphins are going to try to force the issue with Tyreek Hill. They basically have to. After the trade they made, at the draft capital that they invested to trade for Tyreek Hill, they are going to throw Tyreek Hill's way as much as they can. And yes, Quinn, I am with you. Waddle will be wide open.
Should be.
All the time. It does not mean the ball is going his way when he's wide open. And it does not mean that Tua is the quarterback that will be able to get the ball to him when he needs it. I'm just that low. I'm so low on Tua, dude. I'm so low.
I'm not this low on Tua. I'm
so low.
Not.
I just think Diontae Johnson, he finished wide receiver, 8 last year? I have him at wide receiver 17 in my rankings.
Yeah.
I think the same thing is going to happen to Waddle. Waddle was the wide receiver 13 last year. And I don't have him in my top 24.
Wow. Okay.
Because I am so low on not only Tua, but the situation that puts Jaylen Waddle in for at least next year.
Okay.
I love the talent. Love the talent. Have him on a dynasty league that I'm in. Not trading them for anything. But this year, he's my wide receiver 25. And at wide receiver 24, it was a choice between him and Darnell Mooney. And Darnell Mooney's going to get all that work. That's the difference. Do I think Jaylen Waddle's a better wide receiver than Darnell Mooney? Yeah. But Darnell Mooney's going to get all that work. Yeah. Darnell Mooney's going to get all that work. So at wide receiver 17, I have Diontae Johnson.
Okay. We are, I mean, it's you're talking 4 or 5 spots here and there. I have Diontae at 21, and I love Diontae. I'm a huge fan of Diontae. But I do have him as kind of a more of a middling wide receiver 2 this year.
And why is that?
Because it's not
it's the same
so
reason
different.
I'm discounting Jaylen Waddle. Yeah.
It's the fact that he was hyper targeted last year with a broken quarterback, and does Mitchell Trubisky, who I am starting to think it's going to be Trubisky who is the week 1 quarterback, barring something completely unexpected. I think Trubisky is Trubisky's less of a broken quarterback from a physical talent perspective than Ben Roethlisberger was last year. I think Trubisky's or Pickett ultimately is a better sign for everybody else except for Diontae, and I'll throw Najee Harris in there as well from a target distribution, because almost 80% of Ben Roethlisberger's attempts last year were incredibly short, were either dump offs or little short slants to Diontae. That's not going to be the case this year in Pittsburgh. The target share is going to be more distributed, and there might be more deep shots. Diontae can do that, but that helps Chase Claypool. That helps George Pickens. And it takes away from Diontae and Najee, potentially. Plus, Trubisky is and Pickett, both, it doesn't matter, are both much more running threats. So there could be any given play where it's they drop back to pass, but instead of a little dump off, they scramble. It's just little things like that. Those little changes, those incremental changes like that happen over the course of the season. That's why I have Diontae down to wide receiver 21. And you know how much of a fan I am of Diontae.
Oh, yeah. And I'm pretty much in lockstep out with all of your arguments. I just have him ranked a little bit higher because I do think he's still going to be the highest targeted wide receiver in this offense. The new quarterback is absolutely and makes his target rate uncertain. He was number 2 in targets in 2021, and that was with a rookie tight end and Eric Ebron, with no Juju, with only Claypool as competition, and Claypool was making bonehead moves halfway through the season and getting in the coach's doghouse.
Or you mean Freiermuth? I was like, Ebron wasn't a rookie.
No. He had a rookie TE in Freiermuth.
Oh,
and
I thought
Ebron.
You said Ebron. Sorry.
No.
Oh, and Ebron. Sorry. Got you. Sorry.
And all of that whole situation that led to Diontae Johnson being the number 2 wide receiver in targets in 2021 is not going to happen in 2022. It's just not. I expect his 2022 season to look more like his 2020 season, where he finished wide receiver 21, which is exactly where you have him in your rankings, which is dope.
But he's better. But he's like a better player now,
right?
Than he was
which is
then.
why
so I understand having him a little
up just
higher.
a little bit more. Exactly.
Yeah, he's a better player now.
He was in that season. He was number 6 in targets. So he wasn't up at number 2 in targets. He was number 6 in targets in 2020. But he was first in drops. Remember that year? He had the dropsies. He had I think
he had the
9 to 10 drops. I don't think that's going to happen with the progression that we've seen from Diontae Johnson in recent years. He's not that drop-prone wide receiver that he was 2 years ago. He should get around the 144 targets that he got in 2020 with more catches, and that means a higher finish than the wide receiver 2020 or wide receiver 22 in points per game, wide receiver 21 finish. It looks to me more like wide receiver 17 in points per game, given the growth that we expect from him at the wide receiver position. Again, He is 1 year short of his age apex season. He's only 26 years old, still a very young wide receiver. So, yeah, I am I'm still discounting him 9 spots in my rankings from where he finished last year based on that uncertain target rate. But he's still going to be the most targeted wide receiver in this offense. And because of that, wide receiver 17, mid-tier, low-end tier, wide receiver 2, sounds about right to me.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I guess it's just I have him a little bit farther down at 21. Because
but let's
a couple
get to
of
this
other
chat.
Players.
You said you wanted to address the Rondale Moore question from Quinn. So
or it wasn't really Quinn. He just said it's
18,
Rondale.
Let's go.
So, yeah, I mean, with Rondale, this actually goes directly into my wide receiver 18 conversation. It's Marquise Brown. He's my wide receiver 18 for the year going into the season. The DeAndre Hopkins suspension fallout is going to be significant because he's going to miss 6 games, 7 weeks if you include the bye week. That's a lot of time without DeAndre Hopkins in the lineup. Marquise Brown is going to operate as the team's wide receiver 1 this year. But Rondale Moore should be an every down player for them for at least the first month and a half. He's going to get his opportunity here. He's going to get his opportunity to shine. And it might be a Jaylen Waddle-esque season in the form of like not too much of an A dot, but a lot of catches, a lot of work around the line of scrimmage. And then let's see if he can run in space a little bit. Obviously, the difference with Rondale is he's 5'7", and how much will that work against him? But we've seen smaller players in that Swiss Army knife type of role before. He's not probably, and I don't want to tell an NFL player what to do. They're in the NFL and I'm not. But ideally, he's in the weight room bulking up a little bit because what you can make up, you can try to, at the very least, make up by, a lack of height by being a little bit more stocky. Not that you want to take away his speed, but you do want to increase his durability. So, yeah, there could be a lot of catches coming Rondale's way, a lot of short intermediate work. We could see a bit of a dink and dunk type of offense from Kyler. And then, you take the occasional moonshot to Hollywood, which they'll hit on more than a couple of those. I'm willing to bet. But yeah, the Rondale's time to shine and time to carve out a role is upon him. It is now. AJ Green is another year older. Christian Kirk is gone. Chase Edmonds is gone. Rondale was relatively high draft capital for Arizona last year. So, like, giddy up. The time is now for Rondale. Time to do his thing. I don't totally disagree. I mean, I won't put him at, like, I'll give him, wide receiver 3 upside. He's being drafted as a wide receiver 4 or 5. That's about right. He obviously still has to prove it, but yeah, I mean, now's the time. And I have Marquise Brown, his teammate, listed as a mid wide receiver 2 this year. He's going to have to be the one that takes the pressure off and takes the top off and gets other guys open. He can do that. So that'll help.
I am not as high on Rondale Moore. I still like the prospect, but I do think that he has a ceiling that is imposed by the fact that he is just not. He doesn't have the size of other wide receivers. Being 5'7" limits him.
Definitely has. Yes.
And it's not like DeAndre Hopkins is out for an entire year. 6 games. That means you should still be getting 11 games of a wide receiver who has the floor of a wide receiver 10. Because DeAndre Hopkins in 2020 was wide receiver 5 in points per game. And in 2019 was wide receiver 4 in points per game. And I know he technically, he got injured a little bit last year, but was still wide receiver 10 before going down. Still had 7 touchdowns in 8 games. Pretty damn good. DeAndre Hopkins isn't not coming back. DeAndre Hopkins is just coming back fully healthy after 6
we'll get him
games.
in the second half. Yeah, we'll get him in the second half.
Which means you shouldn't be overblowing the I'm not talking about specifically Marquise Brown here, but Rondale Moore. You shouldn't be overblowing the hype on him. He has a ceiling. I think his ceiling.
I agree with that.
The amount of wide receivers who have succeeded in the NFL who are that small, it's basically Cole Beasley in the last 10 years. If you go back further, then it's Wes Welker, who happened to be playing with the Hall of Fame level quarterback at the time. And 2 of them actually. But I mean, if we're projecting the ceiling for what a 5'7" wide receiver does in the NFL, that's basically in the best years of his career, he's a wide receiver 3.
Yeah.
That's and are we projecting that this is going to be like the best we'll ever see from Rondale Moore? Because the best we ever saw from Cole Beasley, who was the best wide receiver who was sub 5'8" in the league over the past 10 years, was a low-end to mid-tier PPR wide receiver 3. Don't be drafting him in standard because he's much lower than that. Wide receiver 4 level.
Yeah, and I think
just don't go overboard on Rondale.
Right, I think that's his ceiling. I think that's his ceiling. But
I think he's a wide receiver 4, and he will have wide receiver 3 years. Maybe that is this year because he is playing for the first 6 games without D-Hop.
Yeah, he'll get a more prominent role to start to buoy his numbers.
Don't go overboard on Rondale. Just don't. That's all I'm saying.
See, I'm drafting him in best ball this year because his ADP is the same as it was last year. I can probably kind of comfortably assure you I will be fading him next year if he performs well in Hopkins' absence and his ADP goes up. But I think he's got a decent chance this year to do a little something. Wide receiver 4, your team's wide receiver 5, I'm fine with that. And yes, he should have wide receiver 3 weeks here and there, at least to start the season. But yeah, I mean, he's versatile. We'll see what happens. Is there anything else?
That wide receiver stack for the Chargers will be great. For the Broncos, we've yet to bring up any Broncos wide receivers yet. Mine's coming. I think Nick's is coming too. I think we probably land on different sides of the coin here because I have Courtland Sutton, and from what I know about Nick, he's got Jeudy in his top 24, and I have Sutton. So either way you go, well, you'll hear both of our thought processes on where these guys rank and why they rank there. So you'll be able to make the decision for yourself by the end of this live stream on which wide receiver you should be looking to stack with the Russell Wilson. But a Broncos stack, a Chargers stack, very good stacks to have.
Chargers stack, you can't go wrong.
No.
With either guy. And grab Palmer and Everett while you're at it at the end of your drafts.
Yeah.
Just who cares?
Yeah.
Like, just do it. KOTJ, no. No. Would you trade Saquon for Aaron Jones? He would be acquiring Jones. No.
No, the fact that you own Dylan means you should be happy with the fact that you have diversified assets in him and Saquon.
Saquon is 2 years younger than Aaron Jones, has proven that he can be go Aaron Jones. They've both proven they can be top 2 running backs for the season. Saquon, I would say, has the boom upside to finish it to finish that way again. Jones is a low-end RB1, but Dylan is – we're both high on Dylan this year. Saquon's got the ceiling that Jones while I love Aaron Jones, Saquon's got the ceiling that Jones just quite doesn't have. Hold Saquon.
Yeah,
Hold
don't
Saquon.
Right now is the lowest there's the lowest you will be able to draft Saquon and redraft of basically any year of his career.
Don't
be selling low on Saquon, which is technically what you're doing if you're moving him for an aging running back with technical workload concerns. Not a move I'm trying to be doing.
Yeah. Hold Saquon. And the chat agrees. What's going on, Rojo?
What's going on, Rojo?
Yeah.
Barkley season.
Keep that. Yeah. Keep the guy with top 5 upside. I love Jones. He's got RB1 upside. Let's not get it twisted. But for Dynasty, you have his heir apparent, and he's only 23, 24. Saquon's 25. I think Jones is 27. I love Aaron Jones, but we're probably only about 2, maybe 3 years away from a potential drop-off.
And Hunter,
a likely
I would
drop-off.
absolutely love that, but the chances of that happening are less than the chances of Rob Gronkowski unretiring and coming back to play for the Bucks this year. So
yeah.
But let's get back to these rankings. Let's get
to
back
the
to
moon.
These rankings because you were just talking about Marquise Brown. Do you want me to say my piece on Marquise Brown, or do you just want my wide receiver 18?
So he's my wide receiver 18. And a lot of that is the potential for a strong start to the season because he will operate as the team's wide receiver 1 for the first 6 games. When DeAndre Hopkins comes back, we are going to assume and operate that Hopkins takes back that number 1 role.
Yeah. I don't think there's a question in that.
Yeah, I mean, Hollywood proved that he can put up a wide receiver 1 numbers over the course of an extended
he proved that he could put up wide receiver 1 numbers when Rashod Bateman was out for over the first 6 games of the year. But as soon as Rashod Bateman came into the fold, then Marquise Brown, he didn't take all the way a step back, but he took a step back and he absolutely faded down the stretch. Because if we're talking about undersized wide receivers, and I have Marquise Brown in my top 24, so I don't want to be shitting on him too much to the point where you would think that I don't have him in my top 24. But he is 5'9", 166 pounds. This is not a beast of a wide receiver. He just succeeds with his speed. But if he is put in his place by a DeAndre Hopkins, who should still be the alpha, then I'm expecting him to be more like Will Fuller, the speed wide receiver complement. He's the speed wide receiver complement. It doesn't mean I don't think he performs like a wide receiver 1 with DeAndre Hopkins on the other side. I don't even think he performs like a high-end wide receiver 2 with DeAndre Hopkins on the other side. The reason why I have Marquise Brown in my top 24 is because he's playing those first 6 games with basically no target competition. That's the only reason I have him in my top 24.
I mean, he also, to be fair, he faded down the stretch last year, which coincided with when Lamar Jackson missed the rest of the season. So he was down his quarterback, and Huntley was hyper targeting Mark Andrews. There was a shift in quarterback play there that I think affected him as well, not just the return of Bateman. And Kyler himself has also missed extended time due to injury. So,
but I mean, Marquise Brown was still look at these. I just want to play devil's advocate with you here. Look at these target totals from weeks 9 through week 17. Yeah. Actually, we'll go back to week 7. Week 7, 14 targets. Week 8, 12 targets. Week 9, 13 targets. Week 11, they had their bye week in week 10. Week 11, 10 targets. Week 12, 7 targets. Week 13, 8 targets. Week 14, 14 targets. Week 15, 9 targets. Week 16, 8 targets. Week 17, 8 targets. If a wide receiver was getting that amount of work, he should be doing better than what Marquise Brown did down the stretch. I almost don't. Yeah. It's not that I almost don't care about the quarterback, but to say that Tyler Huntley came in and was hyper targeting other wide receivers is just straight wrong. He was getting probably more targets over that stretch than anybody outside of the top 10 wide receivers. He was still hyper targeted and he wasn't producing.
All right, he was hyper, but the quality of targets was bad. Like 3 catches, 27 yards, 3 catches, 28 yards.
It was worse than what it was.
5 for 40.
I would have to look at the numbers from Tyler Huntley, the analytics on a playerprofiler.com or something to really see how worse of targets they were. Were they the same type of targets that Lamar Jackson was giving him? No.
I mean, no.
Lamar Jackson was hyper targeting him and getting insane touchdown numbers with him. Week 1, touchdown. Week 2, touchdown. Week 3, no touchdown. Week 4, touchdown. Week 5, 2 touchdowns. Week 6, no touchdown. Week 7, touchdown. That's insane touchdown numbers. Those were bound to regress a little bit, even with Lamar Jackson in there.
Yeah, I mean,
I am really hesitant to go overboard on Marquise Brown because I really think he's a beta wide receiver who overproduced over the first half of the season when they literally had nobody else at wide receiver outside of Sammy Watkins. He was still getting targeted like a number 1 wide receiver over the last half of the season. Those are Amon-Ra St. Brown-like target totals. Look at what Amon-Ra did. He was only wide receiver, I think, 4 over the last half of the season because he was getting targeted 10, 12, 8, 14 games a season, or targets a game. And that's exactly what Marquise Brown was getting and doing nothing with them. The quarterback should be better.
Yeah, I mean, the quarterback play is better.
But I am really hesitant to go overboard on the Marquise Brown hype. It's going to be 6 games of crazy Marquise Brown work, and then you should be selling him if you have him. Everywhere. redraft, sell him for a better wide receiver. Dynasty, after 6 weeks, sell Marquise Brown, because people will be looking at him like he's Tyreek Hill, and he's just not.
Well, you're gonna scare everybody off if you wait that long, because then it's just like, well, now Hopkins is coming back. Your move is obvious.
Yeah, but you get my point.
So do it after you're gonna have to do it in week 2 or 3.
You get my point.
No, I mean, well, you have to do it in week 2 or 3 if you want to do it, because
you get the point I'm making.
If you want to get something good.
You get the point I'm making. He's going to exceed expectations through 6 weeks, and then he's going to be put in his place by a true alpha wide receiver who is going to be all the way healthy with fresh legs, who's going to come in, reassert himself in that offense, because DeAndre Hopkins is that dude, and then he will probably be a boom bust wide receiver 3 with wide receiver 2 upside weekly. Book it.
I mean,
that said, because of those first 6 games, I still have him wide receiver 21, because those first 6 games are going to push him up.
Yeah, they're going to buoy him.
Box totals. Exactly.
Yeah. I guess I'm not expecting as much of a drop-off as you are when Hopkins returns. And that's, I guess, the difference in our rankings. Because I know Hopkins has been great, but we're operating under the assumption that he will remain fully healthy coming off a suspension for performance-enhancing drugs, right? And he's in his age 30 season and has dealt with numerous injuries. I love DeAndre Hopkins and am rooting for him, but let's not act like this is the potentially perfect situation that he is coming back from.
He's only 30.
Yeah, you said. I mean, we are pretty strong advocates of, though. Obviously, we're just talking about the 2022 season, but this is the time to look to consider moving a player like that.
Yeah, but we're talking about redraft.
Yeah,
and DeAndre Hopkins is still an alpha wide receiver who was busted, and you mentioned he was busted for PEDs. This isn't a Will Fuller busted for PEDs situation. He was taking some holistic medicinals, and one of the holistic medicinals that he was taking ended up having a product that he did not know was in there because of the factory or manufacturing plant or whatever, in which whatever the concoction he was, or the protein shake or whatever he was using was being made with other products, and some trace minerals from another product were caught in his batch, and it ended up being flagged for being against the NFL protocols for what you can put in your body and what is determined as a PED. This is not a Will Fuller PED situation with DeAndre Hopkins. But I think we're just going to have to agree to disagree. You're higher on Marquise Brown than I am by a fair margin. I think he's going to have an insane first 6 weeks and then fall down to earth. Or fall back to earth, which for him is still boom bust, high quality wide receiver 3 with wide receiver 2 upside weekly. Think Christian Kirk with a little bit more variance, some more boom weeks, some more bust weeks. And Christian Kirk finished as the wide receiver 24 last year. So I have Marquise Brown at wide receiver 21.
Okay. I have him at 18. I'm not I guess I'm expecting a little bit more of a floor than you are.
The floor is something Marquise Brown has never had.
I know, but the situation is potentially better than it has been before.
Fair.
So, potentially.
Yeah, we can argue around in circles. We're not going to agree on Marquise Brown, but I still have him in my top 24.
So who do you have at 18?
At 18, this is where I have my first Broncos wide receiver. This is where I have Courtland Sutton.
Okay.
Now, Courtland Sutton's resume in points per game is frankly terrible.
It's not great.
Wide receiver 51 last year, an incomplete score the year before, and wide receiver 27 in the year where he had over 1,000 yards with Drew Lock. He was still only wide receiver 27 in points per game. But hear me out. He was 36th in targets last year, 8th in air yards, 5th in unrealized air yards, 71st in targets per snap, which means he was out there a ton and barely got targeted. DK, with Russell Wilson last year, was wide receiver 23 in targets per snap. So I expect his targets to go way up. The air yards, he was 8th in air yards, 5th in unrealized air yards. Remember what DK Metcalf's were? Number 1 in unrealized air yards. So his air yards going to go up. Targets going to go up. Air yards going to go up. Russell Wilson, everybody knows he's a better quarterback than what Courtland Sutton has been dealing with for the past few seasons.
Yeah, that's pretty fair.
He will be Russell Wilson's new de facto DK wide receiver who finished wide receiver 10 and wide receiver 20 in points per game in back-to-back seasons. Courtland Sutton only scored 2 touchdowns last year. Russell Wilson's wide receiver ones score touchdowns. Straight up and down. I like Jeudy just fine. And I know your point to why you have Jeudy higher than Sutton is because when Jeudy and Sutton were both in the offense, Jeudy did well and Sutton disappeared.
Yeah, Jeudy erased Sutton to this point.
But I think that has more to do with the quarterbacks and the deficiencies the quarterbacks he was playing with were than any deficiencies that Sutton has. Judy's presence does not scare me away from Sutton. His splits with Jeudy last year are really kind of an unfair comparison to make because of those QBs. Prior to the hand injury, in the first 4 games of the year, Russell Wilson was the QB 10. Bridgewater, all season, QB 23. And Locke, even worse. Russell Wilson's point per game finishes over his career. 2021, he was 13th. 2020, he was 6th. 2019, he was 6th. 2018, he was 13th. 2017, he was 1st. 2016, he was 17th. Worst season. 2015, he was 3rd. 2014, he was 3rd. 2013, he was 11th. In 2012, in his rookie season, he was the 11th in points per game from the quarterback position. Bridgewater was probably the best quarterback that Courtland Sutton has ever played with, and he was quarterback 23. Russell Wilson is so much better, and I don't need to tell you this, he's so much better than Teddy Bridgewater, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Russell Wilson, over the past 3 seasons, when he has had a clear alpha wide receiver by body type and a clear speedster, do-it-all, Jerry Jeudy type wide receiver in Lockett, these are the finishes. In DK Metcalf's rookie season, he was wide receiver 25. He didn't hit that 1,000-yard receiving mark, but again, wide receiver, he was a rookie wide receiver.
Yeah.
Tyler Lockett was wide receiver 15. In 2020, we went over it earlier, DK Metcalf was wide receiver 5, Tyler Lockett, wide receiver 11. 2021, a down year for the offense, and for DK Metcalf specifically, Tyler Lockett, wide receiver 11, DK Metcalf, wide receiver 13. You've mentioned that Tyler Lockett and Russell Wilson, in past live streams, you've mentioned this, have this insane mind meld where Russell Wilson, when targeting Tyler Lockett, basically it was never resulted in an incompletion. What was that?
It wasn't that. They had a perfect passer rating.
That's what it was. That's what it was. Do I expect Russell Wilson to come right in and have the same mind meld with Jerry Jeudy? No. I expect the output to probably be similar because they're going to be playing in similar spots in the field and playing similar roles. But speaking of similar roles, Courtland Sutton's the DK Metcalf in this offense. And DK Metcalf, even in a down year, finished wide receiver 13. And in a up year, finished wide receiver 5. I know there's more target competition in this offense with Tim Patrick and KJ Hamler and Alberto from the tight end position and 2 running backs, both of which can catch the ball. Get that. which is why I don't have Courtland Sutton up by where I have DK Metcalf, but or higher than DK Metcalf because Courtland Sutton's playing with Russ. But I think Courtland Sutton is a good bet to finish as, a mid-tier wide receiver 2 with high-end wide receiver 2 upside and some wide receiver 1 games in there with Russell Wilson playing in a loaded division where Russell Wilson is going to have to air it out against competition to stay in games. I love Courtland Sutton, and it's not that I don't love Jeudy, it's just that I think Jeudy is more of the Doug Baldwin, Tyler Lockett type, and with those types of wide receivers, you need the rapport to be perfect. And that's something that was worked on to where, Tyler Lockett, it took him 3-4 years to exhibit that rapport. With Doug Baldwin, same thing. Took him a few years to exhibit that rapport. Because for the first few seasons in the league, Russell Wilson's number 1 wide receiver was his tight end in Jimmy Graham. So, Courtland Sutton, wide receiver 18.
I have Sutton at wide receiver 24. So he did. He cracks my top 24, but only just. And Jeudy is actually, I'll just say, he's 2 spots higher. He's wide receiver 22. Okay. I have a lot of players ahead of the Broncos receivers, despite their significant quarterback upgrade. And maybe it's a little unfair because of the quarterback play that they've both had to this point. But the past couple of years have just been atrociously bad for different reasons. Sutton missed an entire season due to injury. Jeudy's 2021 was derailed right away due to injury, literally week 1. And neither had he came back. Jeudy eventually came back, but neither one had a good season. Russ presents a big time upgrade. And so, to that point, maybe these guys should be ranked higher than they actually are. Maybe I have some guys that I'm just like a little bit more bullish on, despite maybe not as good of a situation ahead of these guys. But the fact of the matter is we don't have much in the way of recent history to go off of from a production standpoint with these two, which is why I had a more difficult time ranking them higher than I actually have them. And that's pretty much what it comes down to. Jeudy is what I have as wide receiver 22. And again, is it unfair to consider what he, how he kind of made Courtland Sutton obsolete with a completely different quarterback play? Maybe. But I mean, there's another side to that coin is what if Jeudy is just better than Sutton? And we'll, maybe that's an unfair question to ask too. Maybe they're both good. Maybe they're both mediocre. I don't know if we know the answer to that yet.
Yeah.
And maybe we want to like these guys more than we actually should. These are all questions that I have, which is why I can't put either of these guys higher. I know we've seen Sutton perform on a per game basis once a couple of years ago with a bad quarterback, but we're a torn ACL and a bad season removed from that. Maybe that's maybe it's the argument in Sutton's favor is he's now fully removed from that injury. Yeah. Okay. Fair. And I hope that's the case for him. And same with Jeudy. He suffered the high ankle sprain. And once you hear high ankle sprain, kiss that season goodbye for any player. They'll return, but they'll be a shell of themselves. I think that's what we saw. So the upside is there, but I can't put them any higher than the back of my top 24 rankings because there's no proof in the pudding there. I feel like I've said that phrase a lot today, but it applies with these two. I like their upside. I like their situation. There's nothing concrete that I can go off of recently to move them higher than 22 and 24 respectively.
Fair. And yeah, you're right to point out maybe both of these guys just aren't as good as we think they are. But at least Courtland Sutton has had a 1,000-yard season with Drew Lock.
Yeah. There was another word you wanted to say there.
Yeah. Okay.
Started with F.
Yeah. It's not his middle name.
Rhymes with clucking.
Yeah, man.
I admitted we've seen Sutton do it on a per game basis before with bad play. We have. But there are recent performances that I am going off of where I have certain players ahead of these guys. That's all. They still both made my top 24. I have them both as wide receiver 2s, just like pretty much at the lowest end of it. We'll see. Real quick, Rojo's asking, how are we feeling about Amon-Ra? Amon-Ra is the Marlon Mack of wide receivers in that. How does everything affect Amon-Ra? I'm interested in Amon-Ra. I am hopeful for Amon-Ra. There's no conceivable way we can expect the workload that he received in the second half of the season to stay the same. With the return of the entire backfield, with TJ Hawkinson, the addition of DJ Chark, and eventually, it's probably not going to happen until at best the second half of the season, but when Jameson Williams enters the lineup. Now, there's not much in the way of wide receivers until Williams comes back. So 8-9 targets a game could still happen. But does he come through with the monster performances he has with a healthy Hawkinson back, with a healthy DeAndre Swift back, and a healthy Jamal Williams back? That is the question. Like, could I would want to draft him as my wide receiver 3. I would be a little nervous if he was my wide receiver 2.
Okay. I would be a little nervous on that too. I think he is a solid wide receiver 3. I think you'd feel even better if he was your wide receiver 4, but I think that's unrealistic based on where he's being drafted.
Yeah, it's probably not going to happen.
Right. He's not a guy I'm really targeting in redraft. Gotta be honest. I like the prospect more than I like the redraft outlook for him. I think the Lions are set to be one of the better teams in the league once they get a good quarterback. In 2023, come 2023, the team that the Lions have put together will be very good and will probably really compete in that division. Despite the fact that last year did they win a game?
Yeah, they won a couple of games because they didn't even have the first pick in the draft. Yeah, they won a couple games.
But yeah, I mean, I like Amon-Ra the player. I think he's in a bad situation to produce this year. He does have a lot of target competition that he did not have last year. But based on what he did last year, I think there's no way that the team puts him back in the spot that he was prior to breaking out. I think they have to utilize him more than they utilized him before everybody else in their offense basically died last year.
Basically,
I would expect him to be in the 6 to 7 target range weekly with some boom weeks there. I don't think he's going to get up into the 10-12 target a game totals that he was getting when he was producing like he was at the end of last year. And I think, 6 to 7, 8 targets puts him with the targets that he's going to be getting. Probably, low-end wide receiver 2. But he reminds me a lot of a Robert Woods type wide receiver. And remember, Robert Woods with Goff was a high-end wide receiver 2, a
Yeah.
mid-tier wide receiver 2 yearly.
Yeah.
And that was with a lot of target competition in his own right when Robert Woods was over there. He was contending with a speedster in Brandin Cooks and a wide receiver opposite him in a young Cooper Kupp, who were performing at very high levels themselves. We talked about Brandin Cooks earlier when he was on the Rams, and we talked about Cooper Kupp last time. Well, I mean, when we did our top 12 rankings, and that was all with Jared Goff. And they also had a running back who was catching passes in Todd Gurley back then too. And still, Robert Woods found a way to produce week in, week out, to the point where he was one of the most underrated wide receivers in the NFL and in fantasy, playing that wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 role for the Rams when they were on that hot streak early in Goff's career. So if Goff can regain a little bit of that magic, have his Todd Gurley in DeAndre Swift still catch passes and not take away so much from Robert Woods, still have, when Jameson Williams comes into the fold, have that burner, that Brandin Cooks-like burner on the other side, doing things, and still not be taking away significant targets from his Robert Woods and Amon-Ra. Still have the one thing that kind of puts a wrench into these plans is that TJ Hawkinson is a lot better than the combination of early career Gerald Everett and early career Tyler Higbee. That said, I think we're looking at a poor man's Robert Woods, where he finishes high-end wide receiver 3 with some low-end wide receiver 2 weeks.
Yeah, and appreciate it, Alex, calling it out. Amon-Ra's ADP, at least on Underdog right now, is 66. I mean, just a couple of spots ahead of that. If you want to stick with wide receiver, you could have Darnell Mooney, you could have Elijah Moore. He's going ahead. Amon-Ra's going ahead of Devontae Smith, going ahead of Drake London, going ahead of Elijah Mitchell, Adam Thielen, AJ Dillon, and then we're getting into like the Michael Thomas, DeAndre Hopkins part of the draft, where it's like, are these guys I want to invest in? But they're bona fide wide receiver ones that we've seen do it multiple times before. So I feel like there's too many, and Antonio Gibson actually is going a full spot behind Amon-Ra as well. It feels like there's too many guys in that area that I would rather take a shot on.
Yeah. Which is why I said he's probably not going to end up on any redraft leagues.
I don't know that I'm going to, I don't know if I'm going to have too many shares of Amon-Ra.
I like the wide receiver, though. I do. I like the prospect.
He had a great season last year. He completely exploded onto the scene, especially late in the year. But
he's going to be a buy low halfway through the season. He is.
Yeah.
In Dynasty specifically.
Yeah, could be. Because by that point, if he's not performing up to the expectation that he set for himself to end the season last year, then the narrative is going to be, by that point, Jameson Williams is coming back.
Yep.
But then by Amon-Ra.
True.
In that scenario, if he's not performing.
Swift looks absolutely huge. Have you seen the pictures of Swift lately? The dude is jacked. The dude is absolutely jacked, yo. It's crazy.
Yeah. I think he's going to have a pretty strong season.
Yeah.
He's going to have a pretty good season.
All right. Who do you got next?
So, we just talked through wide receiver 18, right? You have Courtland Sutton. I had Marquise Brown. Our rankings, obviously, from 13 to 24 are a little bit more all over the place than we were with our top 12 receivers. But 19 is where I have Brandin Cooks, so we already talked about him.
Right.
Who do you have here?
This is where I have Rashod Bateman.
Damn. So he was a top 24 casualty for me. I could not find a way to squeeze him in. He is my wide receiver 25, but I feel like that's too low.
I mean, did you see the
very high on
totals
Rashod Bateman this year
that I was spitting out for Marquise Brown year when there was nobody else in the offense?
I am very high on Bateman. I understand. This was I struggled on this one. I wanted to make him a wide receiver too, and I feel like by the end of the season, I will find a way to get him in here. It's just not the case for me today. I'm going to agree with what you have to say. It's a numbers crunch at this point.
Yeah, I mean, Marquise Brown was 9th in targets last year with 145, and he's gone. Sammy Watkins vacates 49 targets, so right there, that's almost 200 targets in this offense that are going to be vacated. And who did they bring in? A bunch of rookie tight ends who aren't going to be catching passes because they're going to be blocking while Mark Andrews goes absolutely crazy. Yeah, there was a rumor this morning that they might be in the running for a Julio Jones or something like that. Don't care. Just don't care.
Yeah, that wouldn't affect Bateman at all.
I look at Bateman and I see year 2 Michael Pittman. I feel like I've made comparisons to Michael Pittman multiple times with multiple wide receivers here. Bateman's the second guy here that gets the Pittman treatment. Pittman finished wide receiver 2 and 22 in points per game in 2021 with a worse quarterback and an offense that was also predicated on running the ball with Jonathan Taylor. Rashod Bateman only scored 1 touchdown last year. Remember, Lamar Jackson has led the league in passing touchdowns just 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And just last year, he was on pace, before the injury, to pass for 141 attempts. That should come down because, again, this team looks to be recommitting to the run game, but not so much that I don't want the wide receiver 1 in this offense. Bateman is all the way healthy, whereas last year he was working his way back from a groin injury in his rookie season and still commanded 6, 7, 8 targets a game at the expense of Sammy Watkins. He overcame some serious roadblocks in year 1 and has a much less of a barrier to entry between him and production this year. He finished 5th in contested catch rate last year, and he's got wheels. He's got 4.43 wheels. He's a contested catch wide receiver with speed. He is a complete wide receiver when you look at that.
He's going to be really good.
He's going to be really good. And again, almost 200 vacated targets. And again, I'm going to spit out some of these target totals.
They're
for
all
Marquise Brown last
targets
year.
Too. Yeah.
Six targets week 1, 10 targets, 7 targets, 5 targets, 10 targets, 5 targets, 14 targets, 12 targets, 13 targets, 10 targets, 7 targets, 8 targets, 14 targets, 9 targets, 8 targets, 8 targets. That was what Marquise Brown was doing last year. And for the majority of those games, and specifically for the stretch in which he had 14 targets, 12 targets, 13 targets, 10 targets, that came with Rashod Bateman and Sammy Watkins all in the fold.
Yeah.
Who's going to be running those fly routes? Probably Rashod Bateman with his 4.4 wheels.
Bateman.
Who's going to be the contested catch wide receiver in this offense? Rashod Bateman, who was number 5 in contested catch rate last season. He's going to be awesome. And even if these targets come down due to there just being less pass attempts in this offense, again, remember, Lamar Jackson knows how to throw some touchdowns, especially when the run game for the Ravens is really doing well, because then they have to account for that quarterback running, account for a J.K. Dobbins and a Gus Edwards running, so there's a spy there. Lost in one of the weirdest advanced metrics, and let me pull this up to make sure I'm getting the exact right metric for you guys, but it was cushion, wide receiver cushion last year. Rashod Bateman had an insane cushion, was given an insane cushion rate last. He was number 1 in average cushion given to him by opposing cornerbacks.
Just like a defensive back playing off of him, giving up those 5 yards of space.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know, man.
You can't jam him at the line.
The dude's going to be awesome. The dude's just going to be awesome.
Yeah.
He's gonna, the team has given him the supreme vote of confidence in that they shipped away everybody else. 200 vacated targets.
Yeah, and he's going to soak up 150 of them, maybe more.
Rashod Bateman is going to be awesome.
Yeah, I struggled with this one. I have Jaylen Waddle in my top 24. You don't. I have Hollywood Brown higher than you do. I have
DJ Moore and Terry McLaurin slightly higher.
DJ McLaurin, yeah. So I have some other guys ahead of so our rankings are a little all over the place here. I like Bateman as much as any of them. I struggled to find a spot for him, even though I've been in on him as well and have sung his praises on this channel as well.
Yeah, before I did.
Yeah,
I'll give you that.
So I guess I got to maybe do some tinkering here. But Bateman should produce strong wide receiver 2 numbers all season. And there might be wide receiver 1 upside to be had. Because I expect the target share to maybe come down a little bit, because that was a lot of the volume that they had, the Ravens did last year, was out of necessity. Their backfield is back, so they will run the ball a little bit more. But honestly, that doesn't affect the top targets in the passing offense.
No.
That hurts your Devin Duvernays and your Tylan Wallaces and those types of guys. It does not affect your alphas, and so Bateman deserves to be on this in here somewhere. I'll have to find a way to squeak him in. I am high on him. Wide receiver is deep.
It is, man.
Wide receiver is
deep. It's the deepest this position group has ever been.
It's the deepest position. It will forever be the deepest position. There are really good players all over the board. It's just a matter of hitting on the right ones on a year in, year out basis, and Bateman feels like a hit this year.
I've shipped out so many trade offers for Michael Pittman in Dynasty leagues, and I feel like Rashod Bateman is going to be where Michael Pittman is at the end of the year. We're probably going to have Rashod Bateman. He's a good shot to be a top 12 wide receiver as soon as next year. I really believe that because of just the vote of confidence the team has shown him.
He could.
Not just like all the ancillary metrics and the vacated targets and all these numbers. The team has shown
they didn't do much to
confidence
replace. Yeah, they didn't replace Marquise Brown or Sammy Watkins.
And frankly, for what it's worth, he's got that alpha mindset. What has he said repeatedly since Marquise Brown got traded? That sucks. He was a good friend of mine, but it's my time. This is what I've been waiting for. This is what I've wanted my whole life. He wants that number 1 spot. He's not afraid of the spotlight. He wants it. I think that matters too, to a certain extent. He has that alpha mindset. He wants it. I really like Rashod Bateman this year. Wide receiver 19.
He's going to have a strong season. All he needs to do is stay healthy, and he's going to have a strong season. So, yeah, I have to tinker with this a little bit because I don't disagree. We've both been on Bateman for a while. It's just like, I guess initially I was finding difficult. I was deleting guys' names and adding them, and so, yeah, I mean, he's on the list. It's just a matter of where, but that's a very fair spot to have him at wide receiver 19. That's where I have Cooks at 19. And then I have Metcalf at 20. You have him at 16 or 17?
I have Metcalf at wide receiver 16.
That's right. You have Diontae at 17.
At 20.
You have Terry at 20. I have him at 16.
I have Marquise Brown at 21.
I have Marquise at 18. I have Diontae at 21. You have Diontae at 17. So I think we are caught up on and you had Sutton at 18. I had Hollywood at 18.
You want to get to the chat real quick before we go over our last two?
Yeah, we'll round it. We'll round it out a little bit. But yeah, not a problem. Olave or Hollywood for Dynasty Hunter? I mean,
Olave.
Hollywood is what, 25?
Olave
is how old?
22.
21.
Olave.
No, he'll be 22 in 6 days. He will be 22 in 6 days. I mean, it's gotta be Olave right now. frankly, because Olave has a chance at an extended time as his team's wide receiver one, because the Michael Thomas uncertainty is kind of starting to linger a little bit. There remains team optimism that Michael Thomas will be ready for training camp. So the next 3 weeks will be telling. I think within the next month, I hope within the next month, we're really going to start to, the Michael Thomas situation is going to come into focus a little bit more, and we should have a clearer idea of where he is at, because eventually the team's going to have to give an update whether they want to or not. So that being said, they're not so different as far as situations, whereas there's like a veteran incumbent with a proven high-end wide receiver one track record, but is now aging.
Yep.
The difference is Olave is 3 years younger, and was drafted 11th overall. Hollywood was a first-round pick, but there's a slight difference in capital there. A first-round pick is a first-round pick at the end of the day.
Plus, he's gonna quit the NFL and be a Twitch streamer soon.
Yeah, something like that.
Remember that report?
Yeah, I saw that. I give the slight edge to Olave. I don't think it's like Olave and it's not close type of thing.
It's close.
Yeah, it's close. Hollywood is not. Again, DeAndre Hopkins could eventually get replaced by another stud receiver. We can only predict so far out, and what teams end up doing. But I'll give the slight nod to Olave because, at least today, closing in on the end of June 2022, we have a definitive timeline on when DeAndre Hopkins will return. We haven't heard a whole lot on Michael Thomas, and if he's still rehabbing 2 years removed from an injury, we can be optimistic, but it's starting to get like, okay, like, this is not a no news is good news situation. This is we could use an update here. So I'll give the slight edge to Olave based on the fact that he might be closer to that alpha role sooner.
And he profiles more as just an all-around wide receiver, whereas Marquise Brown, he is a speedster, and as we know, as soon as a speedster loses his step,
well,
then I'm not going to say they fall off a cliff, but close. When a speedster loses the only asset that made him a wide receiver in the wide receiver one candidacy, not a wide receiver one, but in that wide receiver one candidacy, then he drops a lot. Whereas, and that could happen for Marquise Brown within, by the end of 4 years. We could be looking at Marquise Brown being a very depreciated asset, whereas that's when Olave is coming into his prime. Yeah. So at 26, no less, not even 27. So yeah, it's got to be Olave. It's
Olave. It's close now, but it's the nod goes to Olave for Dynasty.
Yeah. And Greg Dulcich, 7 touchdowns. I don't know how to say his name. Dulcich. 7 touchdowns and 300 yards. Sounds like an Alberto stat line when he was playing behind Fant.
Is Greg Dulcich the new Alberto?
Absolutely.
That would be
absolutely.
That would be ironic.
RAS above 9.
I mean, playing with a great quarterback. This Broncos offense has a lot of pieces.
He's the new Will Dissly. Let's throw it. He's the new Will Diss.
Hopefully without the injuries.
Hopefully, because that guy dealt with a ton of injuries.
Yeah, unfortunately for him. He was a promising player. It just didn't work out. So wide receiver 21 is where I had and who's your wide receiver 21? I know we already said this. That's where you have Marquise. That's where I have Diontae.
Yeah.
So my wide receiver 22, and for the record, I'll just say my wide receiver 24 because we already talked about the Broncos, are Jeudy and Sutton. And I had a difficult time moving them any higher just because there's lots of question marks. Some that are completely out of their control. So they're, it's kind of like the jury's out on them. We like their upside. We like their potential. We're pretty sure that both can be strong fantasy contributors. It's just hard for me to definitively say it right now. And we kind of talked at length already about the Broncos receivers. I don't know if you have anything you want to say about Jeudy or if he made your top 24.
He did not. He's right.
Okay.
He's just outside of it. I didn't rank anybody outside of it, but he is in the group of wide receivers that I have just outside of my wide receiver 24 spot.
So, like, the guy for me who might bump out if I move Rashod Bateman in would be Courtland Sutton, because right now I do have him at as wide receiver 24. So naturally, he would probably be my first cut, which means he's a high-end wide receiver 3 for me. Obviously, he has upside for more than that. There's other players who are maybe a little less, who are equally unproven. But I still have higher because of the potential and talent.
Okay.
Excuse me. So I have that. So Jeudy at wide receiver 22. I do have him ranked slightly ahead of Sutton. At the end of the day, it's kind of a crapshoot on who Russ's favorite receiver ends up being. We can say, Sutton profiles more like Metcalf and Jeudy profiles more like Lockett. And if I had to do that, then yes, that's correct. Like make those apples to apples comparisons. But yeah, this Broncos offense is deeper than those Seahawks teams. Maybe Russ loves KJ Hamler or loves Tim Patrick or Albert O is that touchdown guy. Or, the running backs have insanely strong seasons running and catching the ball. And it's like an equal, it's an even distribution. We don't know. Or maybe he does hyper target one of them. I think we're at the end of this is the last thing I'll say about the Broncos receivers. I think we are hopeful and of the belief that these guys can be good. But we can't sit here and definitively say right now because we have not seen it yet.
Yeah.
How this is going to pan out. That's all. I'm happy for both of them. Because they get Russell Wilson. I'm happy for them both. Oh, man. But my happiness is not fantasy analysis.
Yeah.
What is from the perspective of this is a brand new situation. And I don't know about you, but I haven't heard Russ connecting with Sutton early in these OTAs. Russ connecting with KJ Hamler. I haven't heard those. And again, take those reports with a grain of salt. But there's not been much of an inkling to go off of. The only Russ
report I heard about was the weird promo that he did where he just looked really awkward saying Broncos
that sounds about
Nation
right
or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he excels at being kind of dorky, but
it's all right.
Yeah.
He's a great quarterback.
He's a great quarterback, and that's all that matters. And one, if not both of these guys are going to be good, I caveat that I have them at the low end of wide receiver 2 because there's some variance here.
Fair.
So Jeudy is my wide receiver 22 officially.
My wide receiver 22 is Allen Robinson.
He's my wide receiver 23, so we're pretty damn close on him.
No, man, I really like Allen Robinson this year to bounce back.
I do too.
He hasn't hit that 30-year cliff yet because he's only 29. Yes, he was bad last year, but I really think that was the offense he was playing in and him just being fed up with a lot of the things that he had been dealing with over the past few seasons. He's now legitimately
the course of his entire career.
Yeah, now he's legitimately in the best spot he's ever been in. Just a quick reminder that before Robert Woods went down, he was wide receiver 12 in standard leagues. Yes, Cooper Kupp was doing absolutely crazy things, but he was wide receiver 12 in standard leagues and wide receiver 12 in PPR as well. He was just right there. He was the lowest of low end wide receiver ones. And that's Robert Woods, who's nobody's idea of flashy. And then when he went down and Odell Beckham came in week 10, Odell Beckham was wide receiver 24 down the stretch, despite coming back, learning a new offense, an offense that he wasn't familiar with, and he had insane touchdown rates. He was not targeted a ton, but he was basically getting a touchdown a game. Allen Robinson, despite the down season last year, he was 17th in route win rate. It's just his quarterback couldn't get to him. He was 14th in win rate versus man. And to go over to Matt Stafford and look at what his strengths are as a passer in the league as of last season. You know where he was in terms of passer rating versus man? Number 1. He was the best quarterback in the league at man. At passer rating versus man. The numbers don't lie here, man. It's crazy.
It's a strong connection in the making.
Allen Robinson was the wide receiver 12 in back-to-back seasons with Nick Foles and Mitchell Trubisky, and with Matt Nagy at head coach. He goes from literally the worst head coach situation in the league to probably the best head coach situation in the league. Matt Stafford had 601 pass attempts last year, and
they could go for more this year.
Key in on Allen Robinson, who again prior to last year was the wide receiver 12 in back-to-back seasons, which was the same exact spot where Robert Woods was before his injury. Literally, coincidences, can't make this up. But he's playing across from the best wide receiver in the league last year, who had over was it over 2,000 yards or was it close?
For the regular season, he hit over 1,900. When you include the playoffs, he easily eclipsed 2,000 total yards or receiving yards.
Yeah, the dude's absolutely insane.
The dude is
absolutely good. Insane. 3rd in passing yards, 4th in air yards. Again, 1st in passer rating against the thing that Allen Robinson does best. And even against zone, he was the 9th best quarterback. 4th in total QBR. I'm just going to continue to sing Matt Stafford's praises here. 8th in pass attempts, 9th in deep ball attempts, so he's getting his wide receivers the ball down the field, something that Allen Robinson excels at. 3rd in red zone attempts, so a lot of scoring attempts for this offense. Allen Robinson should be in line for a lot of red zone targets. 13th in pace of play, so they keep it going. I don't know why my screen just turned off. This is awesome technology.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, ninth in money throws. Again, 4th in air yards, 3rd in passing yards, 3rd in yards per attempt. All this to say, Matt Stafford's
the list
great.
Goes on.
All this to say, Matt Stafford is a great quarterback, highly underrated based off of what he did with the Lions. Now that he's on the Rams, everybody sees it. And Allen Robinson should be playing against number 2 cornerbacks for the first time in his career, not number 1 cornerbacks that he's played against for his entire career, while dealing with, even before the Chicago Bears, Blake Bortles throwing him passes.
Yep.
And he was a very good wide receiver for the Jags too early in his career.
Yeah, he had a 14 touchdown season for them.
Exactly. And I think that could be in the realm of possibility for him this year because, again, look at what Odell Beckham Jr. did last year in 8 games. Odell had, let me see here, 5 touchdowns in 8 games.
He had a little career renaissance.
And Robert Woods had 4. So that's 9 right there. And guess who's more of a red zone weapon than both of those guys? Because he's just taller.
The guy who just signed with them.
Exactly. It's just, honestly, I feel bad kind of having him this low. And again, it's because of the guys that are ahead of him.
There's too many receivers.
I could see him finish higher than wide receiver 22. Right now, I have him wide receiver 22. Feels nasty. The dude is awesome when he's really on, and I think this year he's going to get the chance to show that. I think he's going to outproduce the ranking that I have him at.
Yeah, he's done it before. Yeah, I mean, you pretty much covered it. The guy has been a consistent wide receiver 1 in some terrible situations. Now he gets the best situation of his career. And it could be a bit like Matt Stafford, where it's like, we've seen this guy play well on bad teams before, Now he's in the best situation of his career. Like guys, especially veterans, Robinson's going to be 29 before the season starts. You have to imagine, especially coming off like a bottoming out season, so to speak, for Allen Robinson. It was a rock bottom season for him relative to what we're used to. I mean, if these guys are the ultimate competitors, which we have to always, they are, these guys are at the top of their game. You don't think that at the end of the day, they want to still prove how good they are and win at the same time in a new environment that gives them that breath of fresh air, that second wind, so to speak, on their careers? Allen Robinson is going to come out, I think, swinging. He's going to be that dude. Like, this is the team. They won, but I don't have my ring. Like, he's going to be the one, maybe the most motivated on this offense. No disrespect to anybody else who plays for the Rams, but there's intangibles here where I think Allen Robinson really has a chance to shine this year. So you have him at wide receiver 22. I have him one spot below wide receiver 23. And it's like, I'm sitting here like, why can't I find a way to move him higher? I think he's in for a very strong bounce back. ADP of 47 on Underdog Fantasy right now. I feel like there's a million receivers where I'm like, buy this guy. Join a bunch of best balls and diversify the value at wide receiver that we're trying to exploit for you here today.
Absolutely. And just as a last little tidbit, the combination of Justin Fields and Andy Dalton amounted to 506 pass attempts last year. And again, Matt Stafford, 601. So there's almost 100 more. Right.
To the efficiency.
And almost 100 more targets to a team that does not pass to running backs.
Much more efficiency, a better team overall, like better quarterback, better off. Yeah. Allen Robinson will be thriving.
I feel bad I have him this low.
I do too.
Honestly, I would feel fine swapping him with where I have Courtland Sutton at wide receiver 18. Honestly.
Yeah, I could swap Bateman and Robinson for guys maybe like a Jaylen Waddle, maybe like even a Diontae, maybe a Marquise Brown. Like there's I believe in Terry McLaurin and I believe in DJ Moore, but those guys deserve to be they deserve to be ranked in the top 20 as well. So I hope today was helpful, but now I'm starting to wonder.
There needs to be 30 wide receivers in the top 20. Like that's where we're at. Right. 30 wide receivers in the top 20.
So continue to draft running back early in redraft and then hammer wide receiver as much as see how the board plays out. If everybody's grabbing receivers early.
Unless you can get a Jamar Chase, a Justin Jefferson, a Cooper Kupp, a Stephon Diggs, then basically punt. And I'm not going to say punt the wide receiver position, but you can wait. You can wait this year. I firmly believe that. You don't need to reach for the guys that are in the 5 to 10 range at wide receiver. Once those elite guys go,
then you can wait.
Yeah.
You can attack the dead zone at running back, which I feel like is a little stronger dead zone this year than usual. Yeah. Zig another zag.
Yes. All right. So who do you got at wide receiver 23? That was Courtland Sutton?
No, that's where I have Allen Robinson, but tentatively I think I need to move him up. And then wide receiver 24 to round out the rankings for today, which clearly need to be moved around a little bit, is where I had Sutton.
Okay. I have DJ Moore at wide receiver 23.
Okay. We talked a little bit about him earlier. I have him at 15. You have him at 23 for concerns about the quarterback play.
We'll move up as soon as we hear some good quarterback news on him.
Come on, Carolina.
Yep. Wide receiver 24. This is where I have Darnell Mooney.
Okay. He didn't make my top 25.
Yeah, I had to sneak him in there. It was a situation where it was between him and Jaylen Waddle. And I just think the target opportunity that he's going to get is what we want Jaylen Waddle to get, and it's just not going to be there for Waddle. That was my distinction between the two. Darnell Mooney's going to be targeted even more than he was last season playing across from Allen Robinson. Darnell Mooney got 140 targets. He was 11th in the league in targets. I think that number should go up with no Allen Robinson.
I mean, there's nothing else there.
Exactly.
It's Cole Kmet
and Velus Jones.
And
then a couple of running backs who don't catch
Byron
passes.
Pringle.
Yeah.
There's
Euquinimia St. Brown, I think, went there. But who
okay.
cares? Right. Literally, under Darnell Mooney, under all these other guys, I have, a bunch of numbers listed and a bunch of stats. Next to Darnell Mooney, they have no one else. 4.38 speed. Justin Fields' lone bright spot in the passing metrics was his deep ball completion percentage, which was 12th. That's literally all I have in my notes for Darnell Mooney. He has the speed to be a great deep ball catcher for Justin Fields. Plus, he showed last year he has the wide receiver chops to be more than just a deep threat, which is what we all thought he was coming into the league. We all thought Darnell Mooney could be, what Marquise Brown was. But he showed last year he was a more complete receiver than that. The only thing in his way was the quality of targets and the amount of targets.
Yeah.
Now he gets more targets, and Justin Fields should be better this year. Already there's reports that they've gotten, basically Justin Fields has worked through his long release with his throwing motion. And apparently he's yelling at cornerbacks on the field and fiery on the field in OTAs. Take that for whatever it's worth. But, I mean, Darnell Mooney was the wide receiver 27 in points per game last year. So, not great in the points per game metrics. But he finished as the wide receiver 23. In PPR leagues and in standard.
Pretty good.
Let's see here. Wide receiver 22. So he was the lowest of low end, wide receiver 2s. And we expect his targets and the quality of targets to get better. That's really all it comes down to with me and Darnell Mooney. And that's the reason why I had to edge Jaylen Waddle out here. Because based on talent alone, Jaylen Waddle deserves that spot.
Waddle clears, yeah.
Absolutely, and he deserves to be higher than that spot by a long shot. Jaylen Waddle, talent-wise, it was one of the best young wide receivers in the league. I'll put my stamp on that. I just don't see it this year. And I see it with Darnell Mooney. This probably will be Darnell Mooney's last season like this, because they will probably try to bring in another wide receiver outside of him and Velus Jones next year, who profiles more like that alpha target monster wide receiver, what they wanted from Allen Robinson, just a younger version. Or at least they'll be trying to draft that guy. And for what it's worth, coaching staff got a whole lot better because it's anybody but Nagy. It's literally anybody but Nagy. I don't even know who the coaching staff is there right now.
Eberflus, for the defensive coordinator from the Colts, is the new head coach, but the offensive coordinator came from oh my gosh,
the Flus is loose. Yes, there you
go. I'm just checking the offensive coordinator.
Yeah, please, thank you. But
it's Bill Lazor, who came from
the Bengals, right? And he was before that was on Miami. Yeah,
he was with the Bengals. Yeah, last year. So
okay, cool, awesome. Let's go, Darnell Mooney to the moon.
To the Mooney. The only reason I don't disagree with what you said. Obviously, they don't have anybody else. My only concern with Mooney and why he didn't crack my top 24, and as much as I like Darnell Mooney and his prospects, it's fair to question, is he going to be able to handle being a team's unquestioned wide receiver one? He did do it last year, but he did it last year with the help of Allen Robinson being in the lineup. It was, and he was in and out, and it was ugly and it was gross, and Robinson had a terrible season, but at least he was still there. Now he's gone, and they didn't replace him. They didn't, Velus Jones, Byron Pringle. They didn't replace Allen Robinson. Can Mooney operate as the X receiver for his team? That's just the only question I have. And with the uncertainty around, again, I believe in Justin Fields, the prospect, but there's enough of a question about Mooney himself and the development for Fields in year 2. We're expecting both to be fine, but the reason that I have Mooney more as a wide receiver 3 in my rankings is because I don't know if he can ascend to that X receiver role and be a consistent wide receiver 2 for fantasy. That's all.
That's a fair consideration.
He's going to have his strong weeks.
Yeah.
He's going to have his strong weeks. There's no doubt about it. But like on a consistent basis, week to week for redraft, are you going to be able to trust him? I don't know.
That's a fair concern to have. I just think the uptick in targets that he will see will be enough to put him there.
Yeah, I mean, he should come through with volume. He should come through with some volume. But I'm comparing apples to oranges a little bit here, but everybody was incredibly bullish on Juju Smith-Schuster the first year Antonio Brown was shipped out of Pittsburgh. And Juju was a high, obviously the expectations for Juju were significantly higher, but he didn't meet them. It's just like, can that young wide receiver take that next step when we're kind of wondering, is it fair to expect it of him, depending on who it is? So that's all. I think he's going to have a really strong season. I don't know if he's going to finish as a wide receiver 2.
Fair concern. And again, he is the last wide receiver 2 that I have here. Yeah. So, I mean, there a couple pieces of news.
He's probably my top
where
third.
Jaylen Waddle is just blowing up padded camp work.
Yep.
And not just like the unpadded stuff. If he's doing work with Tua and everybody sees it and he's clearly the target hog there in the short to intermediate pass game like he should be, then maybe this changes for me. But right now, I just think the volume has me putting him there. And yeah, I do think that he is probably more of a beta wide receiver. It's probably going to be the secondary wide receiver in an offense sooner than later. But this year he's going to get all the work. So
this year he's going to get as much work as he can handle. It doesn't matter who they bring in at this point.
Yeah.
So yeah, I understand the ranking. He's maybe he might be in like the 27, 28 range for me. If I have to take a look, I have not ranked my top 36 receivers yet, or 25 to 30.
Are we doing that? Do we want to go there? Or do we want to go to?
We might have to.
Let us know in the chat here. We might have to, but if you guys have a preference, do you guys want to know the top 36 wide receivers, or do you want us to head over and start working on the tight end rankings and the quarterback rankings?
I almost think those wide receiver 3s might be a little bit more helpful to talk through.
Yeah,
we could make that. That's going to be. I mean,
Thursday.
It's difficult.
You want to just do that Thursday?
We could, and maybe I encourage anyone who's interested and able to make the Thursday stream and is interested in hearing, maybe our rankings for wide receiver 3s. You guys are probably going to have at least a couple of names where we don't have them in. I mean, feel free to come in, state your case for guys. We'll talk through it. I think that might be helpful. You guys let us know. But that might be a good exercise to do, because at the very least, at worst case scenario, our rankings are nowhere close to the same, but we just talk through. It's like, here's why maybe you should be thinking about this guy.
Will be more different. Just like our wide receiver 1s were pretty much in lockstep, and then our wide receiver 2s, we had most of the same names, but we had a lot more variance. I think wide receiver 3s, there's going to be that variance, but then there's going to be players that I have that you just don't, and stuff like that. So yeah.
We are going to be screaming at each other about why Devontae Smith makes sense versus doesn't make sense. I'm just, I'm playing.
I'm predicting the future over here. All right.
Yeah.
Nick Stradamus.
I'll do what I can. Real quick, Johnny, thanks for dropping in. What's Robinson's value in Dynasty? I assume you're talking about Allen Robinson because we just got done talking about him.
I hope you traded a second-round pick for him.
Yeah,
and got him before the move was made to the Rams.
Yeah. Like a second round pick.
I really like him. He's a value. He's one of those vets you can get at a value just because he's old.
Yeah.
And trade for him
second
before
round
the
pick
season.
even now. Second round pick even.
2 seconds. I would give 2 seconds to have him on my team if I'm a contender. I would just, you know what? Here, if I'm a contender,
yeah, if I feel good about my
they're
chances,
going to be late seconds.
Throw it.
Take my seconds.
Yeah.
Because he's going to be a wide receiver 1 for the next 2 years. Or he has a chance to be a wide receiver 1 over the next 2 seasons.
He has a chance to be. Yeah. Yeah. Should be in for a strong season. Or like early second round pick. I wouldn't be afraid to offer that if I'm a contender. If there's a young wide receiver who's not, maybe like, it depends on where you are. It depends on if you're a contender, and you could afford to give up, or if you're like, I'll give up an Elijah Moore for Allen Robinson, or
if you have Kadarius Toney, and somebody's still high on Kadarius Toney, and you want to just sell that youth, and you can trade into a high-end wide receiver too. No, and you're a contender. I would do that.
Kadarius and a second.
No, just Kadarius. I think just Kadarius would probably get it done. People
if
overvalue
they ask for
youth.
They say that doesn't get it done. Throw in a second round pick. Does that get it done for you? Like they force your hand. They say they call your bluff. They say it's not enough.
No.
Kadarius and then you say
no. No, at that point that's a little bit too much value that I'm giving up. But I think a young wide receiver like that with promise would be enough. Actually, if you're a contender, why the F not? Yeah, sure. Yeah, because what's that second going to be?
Right, I think I would. If I truly believe I can go win the chip this year, Allen Robinson's going to help you do that. Kadarius and a second are not as likely.
Yeah,
second definitely won't help you. And
sometimes
Kadarius
I look at those seconds like, oh, they're going to be good though. And then it's like, yo, if you got a chance to win the ship, it doesn't matter what you ship out to win the ship.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
So something like that for Allen Robinson for 2 years. If you hope he, and then maybe you flip him for better capital next year, after a good season, turn him into a first for something.
Elijah
Moore
for Allen Robinson, I would have paused doing that. I really would, because Elijah Moore,
I'm a contender,
actually showed some real juice. And
did.
Kadarius Toney, outside of one game where he was targeted, I think 13, 14 times, he really didn't show anything.
I guess I was just throwing like a young wide receiver around. Maybe not more.
Rondale, sure. Just gonna piss off Quinn, but I would trade Rondale, not
Rondale
Elijah.
for Robinson. Yeah, there you go. Maybe not Elijah.
Yeah.
I'm just like, my first thought went to like young receivers who are good, but they're not quite on Robinson's level, and Moore has like more competition to work with. But yeah, Moore had more flashed last year in a big way.
And
so
technically
maybe
Kadarius
not him.
Did not.
Kadarius did not. And yeah, Robinson's that type of name where you shouldn't have to give up too big of a name, depending on if the team who has him isn't quite ready to totally compete yet.
And if you have somebody in your league that's just super high on the rookies this year, and you can trade an Alec Pierce, that not the first tier wide receivers, not even really that second tier wide receiver, but that third tier wide receiver plus a second. If you can trade Alec Pierce in a second, John Mechie in a second, Wan'Dale Robinson in a second. I'm not trading George Pickens in a second. I think that's, I kind of want to see what I have there first. I'm not trading anybody I have ahead of George Pickens in the rankings there. And you guys know, if you've been listening, kind of what our rankings were. But that third tier of the wide receiver group in this year's draft plus a second, I would try to do that for sure.
There you go.
Yeah, because that rookie fever, people are still all in on the rookie fever. They are. So, and 50% of rookie wide receivers outright bust. We have to remember that, and not be sucked into the fact that over the last 2 seasons we've had insane wide receiver drafts. 50% of wide receivers bust, even the best of them. So if you have that second tier wide receiver, remember, Paris Campbell, wasn't he a second round pick? Never fired.
Yeah. I mean, so like, not to this point, no.
Yeah, I mean, it happens with these wide receivers. We just get starry-eyed when we look at the past 2 drafts of wide receivers, even the past 3 drafts of wide receivers, with some of these second-round picks that we've been able to nab a T. Higgins, but just remember that, and I would have no problem trading for Allen Robinson if I'm a contender.
Yep, agreed. Anything else in the chat? I think that brings us to the end of our topics today. Putting the timestamps on this one's going to be fun. But basically, to wrap it up, we did do our 13 to 24 rankings for the wide receivers. Definitely some moving parts here still to come through, but some combination of AJ Brown, and then we were split on the Chargers wide receivers at the top. Some combination of DJ Moore, Brandin Cooks, DK Metcalf, Terry McLaurin, Diontae Johnson, Rashod Bateman, Marquise Brown, Jaylen Waddle, all in there. The Broncos receivers, and Allen Robinson. I think I covered everybody in some way, shape, or form.
Thrown in there,
and Darnell Mooney. Darnell Mooney. Yeah, Darnell Mooney is John's guy in the top, that did crack the top 24. Jaylen Waddle was a guy who cracked it for me. I had him a little bit higher. Adding a guy like Bateman in might need to move him down a peg or two, but more to come there. Maybe we can. We need to set up some rankings that you guys can actually visualize, and maybe we'll post as community posts.
Once we're done
the
with the top 36,
once we do the top 36, we'll lock in our list.
And Slim, if you're still in here, remember, throw in the Discord that you want to have the one-on-one. Send us your sleeper name so we can look up the squad and get a little look at it beforehand. And we have you penciled in for the one-on-one tomorrow. To all you guys who aren't members, just keep in mind that we do offer memberships. That offers perks like one-on-one team evaluations, whether that's keeper, Dynasty, and in season we will do one-on-ones for redraft if you're a member as well and don't have any Dynasty leagues that you're in. We also will be doing some sort of members-only leagues. So if you want to draft with us, if you want to have teams and leagues with us, managed by us, and play against us on a week-to-week basis this year, keep in mind that you got to be a member to be able to do so. But that is something that we are very excited to be able to unroll with y'all. What else? Nick's redraft draft kit, which will be hitting before the season. You get a sneak peek at that. You get members only videos. We just, for all you members who missed it, just put out a Bijan Robinson 2023 way too early draft profile, so check that video out. That's only for the members, and we will be continuing to hit on these 2023 prospects over the course of the off season, so you get a sneak peek there if you're a member, as well as just members only content that we are starting to work on and trickle out as we get closer to the season. Members only live streams on Wednesday, 6 p.m. EST every week, so you get an extra live stream with us if you're a member. Access to the members only channel on the Discord. You don't have to be a member to be in our Discord, but you get access to the members only channel in that Discord, so that gives more access to us. So a lot of perks for being a member. If you have any questions about being a member, ask some of the dudes with the FFs next to their name. They're already members. They can attest to what the perks are that you get when you are a member. And we would love to have you, especially as we are getting closer to the season.
Yep.
And members get to tell us, channel improvements. We have a whole and it hasn't been used yet by any members, but there's a whole.
There have been a couple suggestions, but maybe not in that channel specifically.
Not in the Discord, but there's a Discord there for channel improvements. And what I was thinking of doing this year, and I don't know if Nick wants to join me or whatever, but for the Thursday night games, was thinking of live streaming with the members. I know there is a little bit of a time delay, but I don't care. I just want to hang with y'all and watch some football. So that's something that I'm going to be doing on Thursdays after the regular stream. Once the football game starts, I'm going to be switching over to a members only stream, and y'all can chill with me. That might not even be a stream on YouTube. That might just be a members only thing on the Discord, because there is that video functionality on the Discord, and I think there is no 30-second lag. So I think we will be able to sidestep that issue, and you'll just be able to hang with us and watch the game. So yeah, there's a lot of perks for members, and we would love to have you. Love to have you anyway in here, just chilling as a regular member of YouTube, as a subscriber. So we really appreciate any way that you choose to enjoy what we are trying to bring to y'all.
Couldn't have said it any better myself. Yeah, and I'm just looking forward to redraft season. Lots of content that'll be pumped out over the course of the season. So looking forward to it. And yeah, just for the Discord, you don't have to be a member to join. There is a link in the video. There is a link about the perks of memberships if you want to check that out. But it's the top 2 links in the description of this video and all of our most recent videos. If you care to check out perks about memberships or the Discord, there is an evergreen link to join up. You can keep the conversation going over there. You do not need to be a member to join Discord. So you can feel free to ask us questions or bring anything up that you care to discuss at any time in there.
And we got a great community over there. And if we don't get to answer your guys' questions as you throw them in there, people like Alex, people like Hunter, they're in there chilling and are usually are real cool about answering everybody's questions in the community. So yeah, there's perks to both. If you don't want to become a member, absolutely don't join the Discord. Can't hurt. But thanks for tuning in with us today. Really appreciated having y'all. It was a fun stream today, going over these top from 13 to 24, to the point that we will be doing top 36 wide receiver rankings for the first time
Seems
ever.
appropriate
I think
and
this
necessary.
is the first time that we will be doing this on our channel. So looking forward to that. Members only stream tomorrow. Looking forward to that. So we will see you members tomorrow, and we will see the rest of y'all on Thursday.
Yep. Have a good night, everybody.
Peace, y'all. And no technical difficulties. Usually.
Oh,
usually.
You mean off the top? Yep.
Yeah.
Hopefully
Peace, y'all. Have a good one.